Welcome to the meeting of the Arizona Board of Regents. We've called to order on Wednesday afternoon before convening an executive session. A quick reminder that the University of Arizona COVID protocols require face coverings on campus for all indoor spaces where it's not possible to adequately and continuously maintain social distance. The room spacing will allow for regents and presenters to remove their masks when speaking, eating, or drinking. Today's public meeting is scheduled to last until 5 p.m. Later this evening, we have a reception and dinner to honor Regent Shootman, who will be nearing his completion of term of service. We will be very sad. And after the Pledge of Allegiance, we will take a few minutes to share a few remarks from Governor Ducey in recognition of Regent Shootman's service. We have a very full schedule, so we will try to be mindful of time. At this point, I would ask Regent Pacheco to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we now have the video from Governor Ducey.
This is Governor Ducey. It's my honor to pay tribute to a man who's been an exceptional leader on the Arizona Board of Regents, Regent Ron Shootman. For the past 8 years, Regent Shootman has been a tireless advocate for education, dedicating his time to meeting with numerous businesses and community organizations. Ron is also committed to opportunity, as shown by his leadership with the Southern Arizona Leadership Council, Tucson Values Teachers, and the Arizona Bioscience Roadmap. On top of all of that, Ron is also a former general officer and wing commander in the United States Air Force. Ron has fought for his country, and he's fought for higher education in Arizona. I'm incredibly grateful for his service to our students, families, and our country. Through every phase of Ron's life and career, one theme remains constant: an enduring commitment to service, trust, and leadership. Thank you, Ron, for your long-lasting impact on the state of Arizona. I wish you all the best in your future.
Thank Governor Ducey for those remarks. Regent Shootman, as you near the completion of your service, we want to thank you for your dedication and commitment to public higher education in Arizona. It has been a pleasure and an honor to get to serve with you. And I will be very sad to see you leave our group. I hope it doesn't happen further. There are a number of accolades that you deserve, and we look forward to sharing more of those with you at our appreciation dinner this evening.
Thank you, Chair Manson. It's been an honor to have this opportunity. It's very few of us that get a chance to actually impact the future of higher education in our state, and I am truly humbled by the fact that I've had that opportunity working with everyone around this table who I consider some of the best leaders that we could have that I could have to work with in this role. So thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to our next item, which is a call to the public, I just want to congratulate Superintendent Hoffman on the birth of her daughter, Clara Emlyn, today. Everybody is doing well, but she is obviously not in attendance at the meeting, and deservedly so. So our next order of business is the call to the audience. If you have any materials for Regents, please give them to our board secretary, Suzanne Templin, sitting at the table to my right, and she will distribute them to the Regents. Actually, she's on my left. Pursuant to board policy, time has been set aside for the call to the audience, and this opportunity is for individuals to address the entire board in a public setting to express their views or concerns regarding matters of board governance. The board reserves the right to limit the number of presenters on any topic. Regents do not respond to comments made during the call to the audience. However, we do hear your remarks and we ask the appropriate persons to follow up and provide us with information on any issues raised. When you are called to speak, please proceed to the lectern. To keep us on schedule, each speaker has no more than 3 minutes. As a courtesy to each speaker, please, Suzanne will hold up a sign signaling how much time is remaining. At the end of your 3 minutes, we ask that you conclude your remarks. Suzanne, can you call the first speaker?
Yes, Mark Stegman.
My name is Mark Stegman. I am a professor in the Eller College at the U of A, and I am here speaking not for myself at this time, but representing a person who cannot be here, a senator from the UA Faculty Senate, Ted Downing, has asked me to put this into the record. He is out of town and cannot do that himself. He asked me to read into the record a resolution, and this is a service I should say I would provide. I'm the parliamentarian of the Faculty Senate, a non-voting member, and I would be happy to do this if I were able for any senator, regardless of whether I agreed with the statement. I'm simply voicing the view or request or satisfying the request of someone who cannot be here. The Faculty Senate on October 4th, I'm reading here, resolved by a vote of 23 positive to 10 negative with 7 abstentions, the following resolution. And this is what he wanted me to read into the record. The vote on the general education refresh taken on April 5th, 2021 on Qualtrics, the Qualtrics remote voting system, was a vote in support of continuing engagement with but not final approval of the general education program. Secondly, that the Board of Regents be formally informed of this clarification by the Senate, as I believe has happened, and that the Faculty Senate cannot grant final approval to the program without seeing and discussing all plans developed by the General Education Office, all program requirements, all versions of documentation presented, and commitments made to ABOR about American institutions and civil discourse, including with ABOR staff and the organizational and budgetary implications of the general education refresh and the new general education office. And he appended to this a memo from another senator who is quarantined from COVID, and time permitting, I will read that as well, again, at his request and with the same interpretation. What is the time? So I will attempt to get through this short comment submitted through Ted Downing by Senator Layla Hudson. It's a pleasure to welcome the Arizona Board of Regents to Tucson. My name is Layla Hudson, and I'm an associate professor in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. You may recall the correspondence that I've sent to the board in recent months concerning our general education refresh process. I wanted to update you in person, but cannot be here because of possible COVID exposure on the developments in our shared governance practices at a time that the Higher Learning Commission has recently called an inflection point for shared governance. Engaged Faculty Senate members like myself, who have formally requested more information about the organization's funding and curriculum of the new general program, stand ready to cooperate and have begun to cooperate with the Office of General Education to create a program that the University of Arizona can be proud of. And she has more in the same spirit, but I will stop respecting the time limit. Thank you.
That concludes our call to the audience forms.
Thank you very much. The board is asked to approve the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda include items 9 through 21. Does anyone have a conflict to declare on any of the items scheduled for consent?
Chair Manson, I'd like to recuse myself from item 20, approval of Arizona Public University's TRIF 3-year plans for FY 2022 to 2024.
Thank you, Regent Dave. I understand you're going to recuse yourself from item 20. And so we will have 2 motions for the consent agenda. This will allow Regent Dave to participate in the first motion and be recused for the second. So motion number 1, I move that the board approve items 9 through 19 and 21 as listed on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Motion number 2, Regent Dave is recused from this motion. I move that the board approve item 20 as listed on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. Thank you very much. Our next order of business is legislative affairs. I'd like to welcome Paige Gonzalez, Larry Sandigo, and the University Government Affairs representatives to discuss our legislative affairs portion of the agenda. But before I start, I'd like to take a moment to welcome Paige to the ABOR team. Today is her first day, which is a bit of a trial by fire. And she recently served as Commissioner Chukri's Chief of Staff and has a long and respected career at multiple levels of government. Perhaps most important, she is a sundial. So John, can you please discuss our 2021 legislative agenda?
Thank you, Regent Manson, and thank you, Paige. Paige, come on up. So Paige and I are old friends. We worked together in the Brewer administration together. I cannot overexpress how excited I am to have her join the ABOR team, and what a terrific job I think she'll do for it. Comes with my highest recommendation to the board. So thank you for joining us today, Paige. You have your work cut out.
Thank you. I heard that. Thank you, John. I'm here for moral support for Larry. I'll sit up here, but I'm happy to spend time with you all this evening to get to know you better.
Thank you, Paige. Larry's going to walk the board through the agenda today. We're looking for two motions, one to support some proactive legislation we'd like to see, and the other is an amendment to a legislative policy that the board set a couple of years ago. Larry.
Chair Manson, members of the board, good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I'm going to walk us through 3 legislative items for the upcoming session. The first is the Commission for Post-Secondary Education Alignment. So in the last legislative session, SB 1825, it substituted the Board of Regents for the Commission for Post-Secondary Education and asked Legislative Council to develop the required conforming changes. The bill repeals the existing commission statute and makes the board responsible for the LEAP and teacher student loan scholarship programs. That's the first item. The second item deals with the optional retirement plan. So currently, all employees must participate in a retirement plan. Right now, there are 2 options they must select between: the Arizona State Retirement System, commonly known as ASRS, and ABOR's Optional Retirement Program, ORP. ORP is a defined contribution plan, and the employee-employer contribution rate is 7%, while ASRS is a defined benefit plan, and the employee-employer contribution rate is 12.22%. Currently, only some employees, based on the job performed, have a choice to participate in ORP. These employees are largely faculty, administrators, and service and academic professionals. So the university proposal would open ORP up to all employees. This would have benefits to both the employee and the university. 1, an employee will be able to decide what retirement plan best suits their career and retirement goals, as well as their financial situation. 2, universities could see some financial relief if more employees elect to participate in ORP. If an employee in ORP leaves prior to 5 years, they don't receive the employer contribution. Whereas in ASRS, if they leave prior to 5 years, the universities don't receive any of the employer match back. So the proposal would make 2 prospective changes for future employees. 1, it would authorize any of the employee of the universities to choose to participate in ORP. ASRS will remain the default for those who do not respond, and there will be no effect on existing employees' elections, all of which are irrevocable because of the statutory language in place at the time they were made. And the second change would clarify that forfeited employer contributions for employees who did not stay long enough to vest in the system can only be used to offset future employer contributions as required by federal law for the plan to be qualified. So that's the second item. The third item deals with reporting cleanup. So Statutorily, ABOR submits reports on numerous things, and in looking staff as they looked through what are the reporting requirements, look to see which ones were redundant or how we could streamline them. And so our recommendation is to work with the legislative and executive staff to streamline those reporting requirements. So those are the three items that we have for our legislative agenda.
Thank you, Larry. Are there any questions or comments from the board? John, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not.
Okay. Then at this point, I will move that the board support the 2022 legislative agenda as discussed. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion does carry. John, I think we now move on to discussing the board amendment to a board legislative position.
Yes. So our recommendation is to add 2 points to our general principles. The first one would be that we would be opposed to legislation that would limit ABOR's authority to establish academic requirements. And the second would be that we would oppose legislation that would limit ABOR's authority to provide for the preservation of the freedom of expression and free and open inquiry.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions from the board regarding those amendments? Okay. Seeing none, I move that the board adopt the amendment as discussed to the board governance and authority policy position. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion does carry. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Manson. Thank you, Regents.
We now move on to the business of the Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment Committee. I'd like to welcome Andrew Comrie to the ABOR Academic Affairs and Educational Attainment team as the Chief Academic Officer. It's great to see you again, Andrew. Andrew is the former provost and VPR for the University of Arizona, and we are very excited to have him join the ABOR team. So we look forward to hearing from you. As committee chair, Regent Penley will introduce items 2 through 4.
Thank you very much, Chair Manson. We'll have 2 items in a few moments that will be presented to the board. One will focus on a discussion and presentation around the post-secondary attainment report and college going and completion in Arizona. Then we'll hear a request for approval of appointments of Regent professors from Arizona State University. But before we start these items, I'd like to give you a brief report on our recent November 4th committee meeting. There were several strategic and important items on that committee meeting. One was an update from Arizona State University on its work on developing its general education framework and courses consistent with the policy that the board has adopted. The provost presented that information when we were last in committee, and there was specific direction and comment made by a number of the board members, which I no doubt will result in some further discussion, revisions at the Arizona State University. The committee also reviewed and approved several new program requests from ASU. And among those, comments were made about the importance of focusing on assessment of those programs and taking the opportunity with the new provost in place to really raise the issues of assessment more directly. The committee also reviewed and discussed Arizona's online metric targets for 5 of the 6 online metrics. And I would note that at the committee meeting, we observed that very few or no other universities around the country are focused in on online metrics. This is despite the fact that even prior to the pandemic, we've seen considerable growth in online enrollment, and certainly during and after during the pandemic, we've seen even more growth in online. This board is determined that the experience for students who enroll in our online programs shall be an excellent experience, despite the fact, as we know, that the experience is quite different and very different kinds of students enroll in these online courses. We expect, by the way, to see the sixth metric addressed at our January meeting, and we anticipate finalizing all of these metrics. We also reviewed the University of Arizona's institutional university metric targets, and I want to thank President Robbins and Barry Drummond and everyone at the U of A who've worked so hard to really reach a point where we have these new institutional metrics as well as the targets. The committee also reviewed the fall 2021 enrollment report. And Arizona has been somewhat different than most universities around the country in that during the fall 2021 report, we heard the fact that fall enrollment increased by 4% this fall over fall 2020. And that is unusual for any university across the country, but certainly I think it speaks to the distinctiveness of Arizona and the commitment of our three universities to really increasing attainment in the state of Arizona. That report led to a discussion of a number of issues, including the increasingly online enrollment, the increasing part-time enrollment, the increasingly non-resident enrollment at our universities, the fact that our enrollment pattern is for older students, and an increasingly female enrollment pattern. Our student population is also increasingly diverse, with 36.7% of our undergraduate population either African American, Native American, Hispanic, or two or more races. We then turned our attention to the Arizona Promise program. Many states around the United States have adopted Promise programs at an earlier point. Arizona had not done so, but thanks to the good work of our governor and the legislature in the past session, we now have an Arizona Promise program that is initially funded with $7.5 million. The Arizona Promise program is designed for those who are Pell eligible, and it provides an opportunity to really receive tuition from our three universities if one falls into that particular category. This is the kind of program that will increase overall attainment in the state of Arizona, but it also provides families and high school students a considerable incentive to complete their high school degree so that they receive the value of the Arizona Promise program once they enroll at our universities. This program has been and is a part of our New Economy Initiative. Our New Economy Initiative really has two parts. One part, which I think most people in the state are aware of at this point, is to focus resources inside our university to develop graduates who really respond to the transition in our economy at this point, which is becoming increasingly focused on the information technology and relatively sophisticated jobs that demand a college education. But it's also the Arizona Promise program that's a part of the New Economy Initiative. Why? Because we have to increase the number of students who graduate with a high school degree in our state and ultimately increase attainment. These issues we'll be talking about in just a few moments. We also discussed finally a couple of policy changes in our policy for ABOR as well, which I won't go into since we discussed those at the committee meeting. Right now, what I'd like to do is turn to the two issues that I mentioned we'd be addressing here on the floor today. The first is post-secondary attainment and the report associated with it. And Director John Arnold and George Raudenbush will present this information to the board on post-secondary attainment. John and George?
George, come on. I think you all know George Raudenbush, or
Chair Manson, Regents, Presidents, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk about our annual post-secondary attainment report. As you'll recall, I advanced one slide too many. Okay, thank you. So as you recall, this report is basically a tri-party, the result of a tri-party data sharing agreement between the Arizona Department of Education, the National Student Clearinghouse, and the Arizona Board of Regents, wherein the Arizona Department of Education prepares a class list of all of the Arizona public high school graduates each year, and then sends those on to the National Student Clearinghouse, which appends any registration records for those individuals at post-secondary institutions, including four-year colleges, two-year colleges, as well as trade and vocational schools. We then use this data to sort of measure the state's progress in post-secondary attainment at 2 points. The first is post-secondary enrollment. Do our public high school graduates enroll in a post-secondary institution within 1 year of graduating high school? And then secondly, post-secondary completions. Do our public high school graduates complete a post-secondary credential of any kind within 6 years of their graduation? We've made a few report improvements this year. First of which is we've reduced the report latency. As many of you will recall, last year we looked at this report and focused on the graduating class of 2018. This year, we've moved the data forward through to the graduating class of 2020, so reduced the latency by a year. We've also added some new important data dimensions, specifically economically disadvantaged students who qualify for free or reduced price lunch under the National School Lunch Program, which supports households with an income of less than 185% of the federal poverty level. We now are looking at English language learners or students who are assessed to be non-proficient in English, as well as special education students who qualify for special education services under the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. The last of these was at the request of a 501c3 that informed us that should we take on this reporting initiative, we would be among the first in the United States, if not the first, to do so on a regular basis. This board has long talked about the difficulties of improving post-secondary attainment in the state of Arizona, in that it lacks generally a college-going culture. This is an exhibit that you've seen before that we've updated through to the 2020 graduating class. It plots the 516 public high schools in the state of Arizona by the number of students who graduated from the high school on the y-axis and the college enrollment rate in descending order on the x-axis. You can't quite see it in the slide, but you probably can see it on your materials. There is a light gray overlay on the right-hand side of the slide, which denotes the schools that are below the national four-year college enrollment rate of 42.8%. That is the lion's share of our public high schools, 438 or about 85%. Similarly, about 84% of our students attend those high schools. There's 15% of our high schools or 16% of our student population attending a high school that has a college enrollment rate above the national average. So a difficult operating environment for sure. This year's graduating class is again larger, and we set an all-time high with 73,373 high school graduates. But as the rate or the number of high school graduates has increased, the post-secondary enrollment rate has remained relatively flat, with a notable decrease in the last year due to the difficult COVID-19 pandemic operating environment. Looking into that attainment enrollment rate, though, we can see that there are differences based on the type of institution students are pursuing. The top graph shows that over the last 10 years, the enrollment rate in two-year and trade and vocational schools has declined, while the enrollment rate at four-year institutions has been increasing. Looking at the four-year college enrollment rate specifically, and looking at the enrollments at our institutions versus all other four-year colleges, we can see that overwhelmingly, Arizona public high school graduates choose to attend one of our institutions. But there has been an increase in the number of public high school graduates who pursue post-secondary education at other four-year colleges. While no school compares to our institutions in terms of the numbers of graduates that they're enrolling. It is important to note that over the last 10 years, the share of public high school graduates that enroll in our institutions has been somewhat slowly declining. As you can see in 2011, the graduating class of 2011, 72.4% of four-year students who pursued four-year enrollment came to one of our institutions, and for the class of 2020, that number had dropped to 68.3% of students who enrolled in a four-year college. We can also see, looking at the data, that there are important differences or noteworthy differences between the composition of the population of Arizona public high school graduates and those that enroll at our institutions. Firstly, the general population, 40.3% of all Arizona public high school graduates come from economically disadvantaged households. The enrollment rate at our institutions is 28.4, so an attainment gap there. When we look at underrepresented minorities, 57.3% of the Arizona public high school graduate population are from underrepresented minorities. Enrolling in our institution, the subpopulation has a underrepresented minority percentage of 43.3. And then finally, as you might expect, the population of Arizona public high school graduates is approximately evenly split between females and males. But when we look at the enrollments at our institutions, it's overwhelmingly female. Moving on, we look at the second point in the attainment pipeline, and this is completions. For this, we're looking at whether or not a student was able to complete a post-secondary credential of some kind 6 years after they graduated high school. So the most recent class that we can look at is the class of 2015. And we can see that, for the 10 years that preceded that point, the number of Arizona public high school graduates with any post-secondary completions has generally been improving. Looking a level down, we can see that the story is a bit mixed. For graduates, that there's been relatively no increase over a 10-year period in the number of students completing associate's degrees, certificates, or other credentials, while the number of students completing a bachelor's degree or higher has increased about 3.3%, 3.3% of the graduating class. When we look at bachelor's degree completions at ABOR versus all other four-year institutions, we can see that while we have increased the share of bachelor's degrees awarded to Arizona public graduates over the last few years, there has been a similar, if not greater, increase in the completions awarded by all other four-year colleges. Again, however, our institutions top the leaderboard, if you will, in the number of bachelor's degrees awarded to Arizona public high school graduates, with the number falling off very quickly. But as with enrollments, the overall share of bachelor's degrees that are awarded to Arizona public graduates from ABOR institutions has been somewhat declining for the last 10 years. Again, when we look at the subpopulation of bachelor's degree completers at ABOR institutions and compare that to the population of Arizona public high school graduates, we can see the same important differences. We award degrees to a much smaller proportion of economically disadvantaged students, a smaller proportion of underrepresented minority students, and a much larger proportion of female students. Finally, if you were to sort of combine the results of this report with the four-year high school graduation rate that the Arizona Department of Education tracks, layer the two, you can see that for a theoretical entering ninth grade class, 10 years later, 78% of that class would have a high school diploma or lower. 2.2% of that class would have a post-secondary certificate or credential. 3% would have an associate's degree, and 16.8% would have a bachelor's degree or higher. That's sort of the difficult realities about the workforce contribution that we're making in terms of transitioning our kids through the entire high school and post-secondary pipeline. That concludes my remarks, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, George. Did you have any additional comments, John?
George, do you have any sense of what the national average is for some of these numbers?
Oh, for these numbers, I wouldn't want to answer it here, but I'm happy to send data out. I think it's much, much higher. And more importantly, when we look at studies from
almost 30.
Sorry.
Bottom one is approaching 30. I'm talking about just straight out of high school within that, upon entering the 9th grade. So it's much higher. 3 times, 2 times.
Yeah, I think you're right, President Crow. The 16.8% is particularly a problematic number when you're a 9th grade student, and less than 1 in 5 of you will end up with a college degree a decade later. I was particularly noting, George, the economically disadvantaged data that you provided, and the fact that while 40% of high school graduates were economically disadvantaged, 28% entered our universities, which it reminded me of just how important the Arizona Promise Scholarship is to turn that around and to help families to be able to say, yes, you can go to college. Even though we can't afford it, there's still hope. Is there some other good news that you could find in this report, George?
Regent Penley, if somebody in the audience would like more information on the Promise Scholarship, where can they go to get that information?
I think John Arnold and his staff, Chad Sampson, could provide more information on that. And we have that information, I believe, John, don't we, on the website?
We do, and it'll be promoted out through all of the university enrollment offices.
Yeah.
So if somebody's watching here today, they can go on the ABOR website and get more information on the Promise Scholarship and how to apply?
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of my chief concerns, Regent Pacheco, has been promoting the Arizona Promise Scholarship. And so that has been a discussion that we've had in the background here. I was a bit hyperbolic about the money that I thought we really needed to promote that. Luckily, our executive director has turned that into a pragmatic case where it doesn't cost nearly what my hyperbole would have suggested. But it's clear that what we must do is get that information out to the schools so that the information is available in the schools. I've talked to parents who live in neighborhoods where no one has graduated from college. No one has attended college. And it's very typical for a father or a mother to say to their child, I'm sorry, we just can't afford this. That's why your point about promotion is so absolutely critical if we're going to turn around the workforce in Arizona and have an educated workforce to meet the demands of the economy. That's why I've been so willing to say it isn't just putting money into more graduates in certain areas. It's getting young people to realize that they have to complete high school and have to go on and enter our colleges and universities in the state. So I think you've raised a critical point. John, would you like to comment further on the plans for promotion of the scholarship?
Not at this time.
Not this time.
We will come back to the board with a robust plan on promoting the scholarship program. And we do have some additional slides to address that a little bit further. I just wanted to point out. So what this slide represents is, on average, we cobble together, we don't track students from 9th grade forward, we track them high school graduation forward. So we took that data and just built in the historical dropout rate, to get back to what's happening with our student base if you start in 9th grade forward. So this is looking at your average class when they reach the age of 24, 25, what is their attainment level? In comparison, the national average, then the national workforce right now, about 39% have a 4-year degree or higher. In Arizona, it's 33%. So more than half, or more than double what our current education system is generating.
And to add to what John just said, before I turn to President Crow, if you look at our college graduates in Arizona, they tend to look more like people like me, and I'm talking about my age. And as you look at younger individuals in our state, they have a lower percentage of college degrees. So this bodes very ill for a qualified workforce down the road as people in their 50s, 60s, whatever, decide to retire, and that individuals much younger don't have a college degree. President Crowe.
Several comments. So one comment on this is we have to be very cautious to not self-flagellate too much, both the board and the institution, because if you look at the performance of the institutions against the actual outcomes within the state, they're dramatically positive. They are in fact a powerful set of institutions that are doing a lot. While George was presenting, I was doing a quick comparative analysis of the state of Washington, which is the closest to population of Arizona, about 50,000 people different, I call it 7.5 million each. They have almost 30 colleges in Washington with many, many public colleges. So this notion of our share, we should be driving our productivity up and our share down, because we should be finding ways to, including the board, we were doing this for a while, to encourage more colleges to be born in Arizona, to grow in Arizona, to be attracted to Arizona, to make things happen. Because one of the things that's working against us is we got to the show a modern economy late and grew rapidly and didn't build infrastructure, public and private, along the way. So we have an infrastructure issue. And then a second issue that we have, and this is not a plea for public support. It's a recognition that there is a correlation that the per capita expenditure for public higher education in the state of Arizona is 49th among all states. And this isn't the classic, you're spending this or spending that. Wyoming is first on a per capita basis. And so it turns out then that graduation rates are correlated with resources, period. Now, we've done unbelievable things at all three institutions to have unbelievable graduation rates on the resources that we have. And they would be even greater if there were more resources. And so I'd like to recommend to the board and to the staff that there might be an interesting way that we could take these numbers and these graphics and these charts and operationalize them a little bit more by, if we had 5 more colleges that were private sector colleges, if we had, sort of game it, what would it take to get to the levels that we want to be? What would the investments be? Simulate it. So build a little simulator. And I'd be more than willing to have our teams and myself be involved in that. But I just think there's value in looking at these numbers from that perspective. I will say that the top number is actually the most difficult number to deal with, because the economy going forward for people that don't graduate from high school will be very, very, very challenging. And so I think that we should be looking at that also, the simulation of that. We have the new Helios ASU Educational Data Center and Decision Theater, which is looking at that. We've got some other tools that are out there. And so if there's a way that we could be driven by the analytics, and then each of us could then, even as an institution, you could say to us, I'll just pick on ASU, you guys have got to pick it up. We're going to need another 15% productivity from you all relative to Arizona residents from these family groups to get to these simulation outcomes that we want to get to. And that might be a way to be, not self-flagellating. So when I look at these things, I don't get depressed at all. There's lots of work to do, lots of trees to be chopped down and lumber to be milled. And so we got to get these things done. But I think there would be a way for the public to more deeply understand what it is that we're trying to do. You could pick 2 Western states to compare ourselves with, Washington and Colorado. Just pick those 2 states, focus on those 2 states, and then set our goals around those, and then see how we're doing. So I apologize for the length of the comment, but.
No, they're very important comments, President Crowe. And I think your point about the Helios ASU data that the board is also.
Well, it's a center. It's an interactive simulation.
Center. Paul Luna and I've discussed this, and I know that Paul would welcome the board to join him at Helios and really look at the specifics that you're talking about, so that we really look at where we have levers that might change that 78% to a higher number. And that's where Paul's focus is as he's thinking about it right now. And that's where his board is, I believe, in terms of focusing in on attainment and what they can do with individual schools to alter the outcome that George presented to us in terms of the array of schools across Arizona. George, any further comments on that?
I was just gonna say, it's worth noting that we are already working with the center, and we have bi-weekly meetings with Joe O'Reilly, and we're actually partnering on a number of activities. We share this data with the center, and the center, which has embedded personnel within ADE, is able to sort of provide us
And a decision theater tool that you can
Right,
sit
right.
in at Helios and game all these systems and simulate all this. We should, in a sense, I'm suggesting we up our game.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
go into the simulation business.
So some of the other things that we've looked at is the number of students who actually have an opportunity to take the 16 core courses in addition to sort of, the type of high school that you're going into and the graduation rate therein. So that partnership is already in place. Another point to just elaborate on the sort of comparison to this workforce production rate. There is the average in the country and in other states, but it's probably also instructive to look at things like predictions from the BLS that say that the workforce of the future will need to be 50% college educated, right? So we're well behind sort of the forward-looking measures as well. And then to answer your question about sort of some positive takeaways, Regent Penley, the absolute number of people graduating from college is increasing. The proportional number of Arizona Public High School graduates who are pursuing a four-year degree is increasing. And so those are signs that we're moving in the right direction.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it. It adds to what President Crow said and responds to the question I asked, the positive news and all this. Comments from members of the board or discussion?
We have a few more slides to go through.
You have a few more slides. Okay.
Next slide.
Regent Penley?
Yes, sir. Regent Herbold?
Going back to that last slide, the real problem is the 78. Because, puts us at a max of 22. So the state puts the legislature puts a whole lot of money into K through 12 education. And that's a very poor scorecard.
Yeah, if I could just respond to that comment quickly.
Sure, George, go ahead.
Back quite a few slides. One of the interesting takeaways from this slide for me is that when we look at the high performing high schools, the ones with the highest college enrollment rates, you can see that the populations are not big. They're small schools graduating small classes with high enrollments. As we move down into lower enrollment rates, that's where we start to see the really larger populations in high school. So it's just a noteworthy point to support your concerns.
And to your point too, George, on that slide that you're going past, if you look at the schools that have more than 500 enrollments, or is it 500 graduates? On that slide.
Graduates. You're talking about for high schools, yeah.
It would be relatively easy to target those specific schools and to work with those schools. And I believe that's where Paul Luna and his group are going to target some of those schools. And it would be helpful, I think, if we were working, John, with Paul on that so that we focus in. Because you're right, Regent Herbold, that's the issue. And President Crow was pointing to it earlier. But looking at those data, we know who those schools are, don't we, George?
Yeah. And there's exhibits in the report that actually look at high schools by decile. So we take the 516 high schools and sort of group them into the sort of top 10%, second 10%, see a real sense of sort of where the population is and how quickly the drop-offs are to identify those potential target schools for partnership. And
please proceed. Other comments?
I just had one follow-on comment to the conversation is back to the ASU Helios Center. One of the things I've been driving for the center is like your data is really interesting to me. Who cares unless you have the solution? And so I've been pushing that every time they see this situation, 500 graduates in a high school that should be graduating 900. What is the specific set of solutions, a remedy that can be put into that specific situation? So we met 2 weeks ago with over 100 superintendents in that facility talking about this, getting those things moving. And then I'll say one other thing, which is new to the comment you made, Regent Penley, and that is this notion of high school somehow being limited because they don't have the right preparation courses or whatever. Every course necessary to be prepared to go to an Arizona Public University, we now have available at no cost online for anyone that needs to take it anywhere, from anywhere, any scale, anything. There's no issue whatsoever. We didn't have that 2 years ago. We have that now, so that's a part of the solution. And so the other thing that we have to do is we got to get these solutions out there and move them forward. So.
No, I very much appreciate what you have done personally and what Arizona State University has done to really provide those courses online. Because one of the things that we know that we struggle with in Arizona is qualified teachers in math and science and certain other subjects. But with the availability of the online courses that ASU has available, that particular problem can be addressed in a very constructive and positive way. And I know you've worked hard to develop those agreements with the schools. And I think all of us laud you for doing that. It addresses the 78%.
I mean, there's nothing that's in the way of us changing these outcomes, including money. Nothing's in the way.
Regent Penley, quick question.
Yes,
George,
Regent
if I may.
Pacheco?
Out of the 78%, how many of those are not graduating from high school? Because those both, just high school, just a high school diploma and non-graduates were lumped together. If you go back to the slide.
The most recently published four-year high school graduation rate from the Arizona Department of Education was 79.9%.
Okay.
So a big part of that is going to be represented from applying that first, right?
Okay.
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know, but I can say that, if we start with a class of 100, there'll be 79 to 80 graduates from high school 4 years later. So there's a big sort of cut off the top there.
Not including, by the way, the 8th graders that don't go on into the 9th grade because they've aged out and can legally not make progress. And people don't realize that that's a large number of people. Yeah.
George, proceed, please. Other issues?
Okay. So as President Crow talked, how do we address these problems? And there's certainly a capacity question, and then there's a demand question. And so we've been trying to gather survey work that's already been done on the demand side. Why don't people go to college? In preparation to try to do some of our own research into those arenas. Just last month, Pew released a national survey around college going. So these are among adults who do not have a bachelor's degree and are not enrolled in school. And they list major reasons why they did not receive a four-year degree. And they broke it down between men and women, noting the difference between college going between men and women. And you can see, number one is couldn't afford it. I think that's largely a perception issue in our state. Needed to support my family. And then you get into just didn't want to. And again, an interesting discrepancy between men and women in that case. Didn't need it for a job, just didn't consider it and didn't think they could get in. The next slide. A couple of years ago, 2019 ASU Marketing Hub did a survey. They interviewed prospective parents and students. Found this really interesting. 86% claimed to be seriously considering pursuing a post-high school degree. 2/3 reported that they were on track to meet the admissions requirement, but when they reviewed where those students were actually at, 26% were aware of the course requirements, and only 29 were on track to meet the course requirements. Report concluded that students and parents are not aware of the specific admission criteria, are not on track to meet those requirements. So really two pillars. We need to do a better job explaining the admission criteria, and then a better job helping students get on track to meet those requirements. Next slide. And Helios in 2016 did a qualitative study of college-going motivations for Latinos, juniors, and seniors. Again, very high aspiration rate, 85% of students reported they definitely plan to go to college. They identified family as the key contributor to that decision, but they also cited family as one of the obligations and one of the inhibitors to going on to college, those family obligations. They reported a lack of college going knowledge. Again, they didn't know how to go to college. They didn't know what were the requirements, how to apply for financial aid, how to apply. And then the school environment is critical, with the relationships with counselors, teachers that could help them in that decision-making process and access information that they need. Again, report conclusion, efforts to educate and include families in college preparations are critical. So taking that information and it's limited. I know the universities continue to do some survey work in this area. We're working with the universities to design a robust survey around.
Hey, Regina, it's me. I'm trying to get on the job, and I don't think I'm named as capture. Could you help me? Bye.
College in Arizona, do some more work among the population that didn't go to college, find out in specific to Arizona why they didn't go. Message testing around that, how we can kind of correct that, and then looking for avenues to get data into the hands of the students. So next slide.
Can I make a comment on that slide? Is it possible?
Sure.
So one of the things is we've, fought to expand our enrollments from Arizona students, which we have, as we brought in more kids, which we have. A true bottleneck has been counselors at the high schools. And so just an idea, so for us as a board and us as 3 institutions would be to say something like, well, maybe there should be a Regents certification. You get the Regents badge as a counselor when you've been trained and certified on, financial aid counseling, how to get kids on track to go to college or community college or into the Army or the Navy. And it's not just going to the university, but what we found was actual resistance in the counselors that we were dealing with. And these kids don't need to go to college. These kids, there's no job for these kids. So why would they waste their time going to college? So I'm telling them not to go to college. And we found this to be common, which is why we built our own computerized game-based advising system.
We found that, as we've talked to people, the K-12 system is fundamentally built to graduate someone from high school. That is their focus, that's their mission, and they end there for the most part. There's some very good actors out there that see beyond high school. But things we've done so far that we think align very well with what we're trying to do. Arizona Teachers Academy, we've seen increases in enrollments in all of our teacher prep programs, and pushing out teachers into the classroom is critical. And again, teachers that reflect our student body is critical. And we've seen an increase in enrollments from Latino students into these programs. The Arizona Promise program, I've been informed digitally that it is not on our website yet, but we will have information on our website
So John,
shortly.
to that point, I think we talk a lot about it because we are all familiar with it and we are assuming familiarity on other people's parts. And so particularly when we are in a forum like this, I want to make sure that everybody knows where to go to get more information.
And to that point, the board is actually voting on, when we voted about 10 minutes ago on the final approval for the Arizona Promise program. So it is now effective as of right now. So we will get the information rolled out, and we are designing with the universities a marketing campaign around the Promise program. And then, as we've already discussed, the digital prep partnerships through ASU have, I think, just been critical. Underway, the financial aid reform that the board has assigned us to do, and try to bring more clarity into the financial aid process and into our cost and the cost structures of our students. And then we're reviewing the admissions process to make sure there are no unintended barriers to entry that we have put in there through tradition or thoughtlessness or whatever that are preventing students from applying to our universities. Next slide, please. Next steps. Well, that's two. Goes fast. Next steps, FAFSA efforts. The Board of Regents is now the home for all things FAFSA. We are the hub of all the FAFSA efforts in the state, and we are going to do everything we can to increase our FAFSA rates. We are, I think we rank 44th in the country, percentage of our students that submit a FAFSA, which is ridiculously low. Tennessee, for example, is at 75% of their students submit a FAFSA. We're at 44. Additional research and scholarship around, how do we improve these numbers? What will make a difference? We look at the educational pipeline and really identify where those holes are. And then an awareness campaign. And we've talked about message testing, centralized information, a place that families and students can go to find the information. Early outreach programs, family engagement programs. And I think this is key to really engage the family. Instead of recruiting students, we're really recruiting families. And without that familiar support, we're not going to get the students into the schools. So I think somewhat different approach. And then counselor training, as President Crow noted, the real issues around the counselors. We've engaged them. We have focus groups of counselors. I'm actually set up a meeting with all the counselors at my high school that I'm going to meet with them just to talk through it. And our high school's FAFSA completion rate is 14%. So we're going to go talk about that. And then communications partners, as Regent Schutman always says, communications is always the hardest thing. And we have a number of partners who are willing and want to help us on this front, that are willing to carry that message that we want to send. We just want to make sure it's the right message that we get out there. So I think that's the end. Thank you. That's the end.
Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Thank you very much, George. Thank you, Executive Director Arnold, for that report. We look forward to following up on comments that individuals have made as well as what you all have made. Thank you, George.
Thanks.
The next item is item number 4 on our agenda. Arizona State University is asking the board to approve its recommendations and appointments for Regents professors. Is Provost Gonzalez here? President Crow.
Yes, thank you, Regent Penley. We have 4 professors that we're proposing as Regents professors. This is the highest attainment of academic status within our institution. And having been a trustee of Bowdoin College, which is considered a highly selective elite college, and having been a senior officer and deputy provost of Columbia University for many years, let me say that our Regents professors are as capable as any chaired professor at any university on the planet. They are at that level of capability and impact. We have 4, Karen Harris, who's a chaired professor in the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, who focuses on all things writing. We have Ying Cheng Lei, who is a chaired professor in electrical engineering, who designs things at the nanoscale and in the quantum space. We have David McCarran, who's a professor in psychology, so all things psychology. He's also a chaired professor. And then Lindy Elkins Tanton, who's a chaired professor in the School of Earth and Space Exploration. And she's also our university's vice president for interplanetary initiatives. And so she studies all things related to planetary formation and so forth. So we're very excited about these 4 faculty members, very excited about their capabilities. And Provost Gonzalez has jumped on the screen there. I didn't see you there. So anything that you'd like to add?
No, you did the general outlines of these very distinguished and accomplished and deserving faculty. I could go into great detail about each of them, but they really are at the height of their careers. They've achieved national, international prominence, and they've been pioneering scholars in each of their disciplines, really kind of defining their discipline in many important ways. So it's a pleasure to be able to present these today.
Thank you, President Crow. Thank you, Provost Gonzalez. The write-up on each of these individuals really speaks to their extraordinary recognition, their international reputations, and the respect that each of them has in the broader academic community to which they belong. Is there a motion to approve this set of Regents professors from Arizona State University?
So moved.
Thank you very much, Regent Schutman. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. Regent Manson, we have a motion and a second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion does carry. Thank you, Regent Penley. We will now move on to the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee. As committee chair, Regent Mata will introduce items 5 and 22.
Thank you, Chair Manson. The The Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee agenda includes the committee meeting report as item 5 and 22 for action. Items 18 and 19 were approved on the consent agenda earlier. Item number 5 is the summary report of the Finance, Capital, and Resources Committee meeting from November 4th. The committee reviewed the fall financial status report for the 3 universities. We want to highlight that there are now 212,714 students enrolled in Arizona's public universities. Fall enrollment increased by 4% over fall 2020. Much of that enrollment increased online. ASU enrollment was below the June projections by 1,211 full-time students. However, there was no impact to tuition and fee revenue due to resident, non-resident online enrollment mix. NAU enrollment was also below the June projections by 257 full-time students, which reduced tuition and fee revenue by $2 million net. University of Arizona enrollments exceeded June projections by adding 1,125 full-time students, which increased tuition and fee revenue by $42 million net. All 3 universities have improved financial position due to reducing and managing expenses, improving recruiting and marketing, along with additional state support that was included in the final state budget. This item is for information only and serves to monitor how university budgets are tracking compared to the budget approved last June. The next update will come in the spring. The committee also reviewed the ASU request to sell a land parcel in Phoenix and continue to have parking at the location. This transaction was approved on the consent agenda. We will move forward to item number 22, which is ASU request for approval of its plan to fund its public safety personal retirement system unfunded liability. For this, we will have Morgan Olsen to present.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you know, the university participates in the public safety personnel retirement system, specifically our police officers and some allied law enforcement personnel. That system, unfortunately, has been historically underfunded. It's a multi-employer plan where investments are commingled, but each employer, like ASU, has its own account. Our account happens to be funded at about 49.9%. As a result of some of those underfunding challenges, the legislature 3 years ago passed a law that basically required all employers to begin to address that problem. The board itself subsequently adopted a policy which requires each of the universities to do a number of things, but essentially to improve their funding position over time. So we've taken a look at this problem and have come up with a proposal that, while it perhaps sounds somewhat complicated, will allow us to essentially pay down that liability more cost effectively than doing so on a pay-as-you-go basis. Essentially, what we're asking for board approval on is a ground lease of existing university property on our Tempe campus. We will select one of several buildings that will be an asset that would be leased to a trustee. And then simultaneously, we would do a lease back. So it's a lease back transaction, which will generate around $24 million of capital. We will take that capital and we will invest that in our employer account with PSPRS. And the outcome of this will be that if PSPRS hits its target rate of investment return, which is 7.3% total return annually, we will reach approximately a 90% level of funding, which we believe is appropriate for a defined benefit pension plan of this type. And simultaneously, it would allow us to save about $9.8 million on a cash flow basis. It's about $7.8 million on a net present value basis. So essentially allowing us to pay back that liability more cost effectively. So we would recommend this to you, and I would be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Morgan. If there's, are there any questions or comments by members of the board? Seeing none, I move the board approve the ASU plan to fund its public safety personal retirement system unfunded actuarial accrued liability as described in the executive summary. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Chair Manson, we have a motion and second. If you would like to call for the vote.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion does carry. Thank you.
Chairman, yeah, thank you. Chair Manson, this concludes the Finance, Capital and Resources Committee agenda.
Thank you. We now move on to the report on the Research and Health Sciences Committee. Regent Duvall, as chair of the committee, would you please provide the report?
Thank you, Chair Manson, and running way ahead of schedule. Record-breaking performance. I'm pleased to give a report of the October 22nd, 2021 Research and Health Sciences Committee meeting. The committee heard 4 items, which felt longer. The first item was the university's TRIP 3-year plans for FY 22-24. The committee reviewed each university's report and forwarded their requests to this board for our approval, and that approval was given on the consent agenda. Under the 3-year plans, the universities are expected to expend $80 million each year on cutting-edge research and on workforce development activities. The focus of TRIF, as we all know, are in a couple of buckets: improving health, finding solutions in water, energy, and the environment, strengthening national security, exploring space, and finding new discovery in optical science, and developing Arizona's workforce. I'd like to thank the ABOR team, Chad and everyone else involved, and the VPRs for working diligently to develop a new report format that provides the Regents more insight into the specific projects and initiatives supported by TRIF and where these projects fit along the continuum from basic research and supporting infrastructure to applied research and bringing products to market and impacting the betterment of the state. The committee also reviewed the TRIF 3-year budget. The Regents continue to work with the university presidents and the board office to finalize the TRIF budget for the next 3 fiscal years. The committee also reviewed proposed revisions of the ABOR TRIF policy, and we look forward to further review of that policy at future board meetings. The last item was an update and discussion on the TRIF Regents research grants process, and the purpose of this grants process is to address and deliver solutions to critical issues facing the state of Arizona and our citizens. We continue to work with the governor's office and the university's VPRs to initiate this new and innovative program and look forward to bringing projects forward for regental review at the next Research and Health Sciences Committee meeting. Madam Chair, no action is required besides the consent agenda, and that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Regent Duvall. Our next item is a report to the board on the audit committee, and Regent Shootman, as chair of the committee, is going to provide the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ABOR Audit Committee met on November 4th at Arizona State University. Throughout the meeting, we discussed the progress, value, and positive impact made by audit programs at all 3 of our universities. Working closely with our team at ABOR, the addition of operational and enterprise risk management under the Audit Committee demonstrates the constantly improving effectiveness that we are seeking under that program. Audits are very valuable and provide us the feedback we need to ensure that continuous program takes place in practice. The meeting began with a review of documents received from the Auditor General, announcing the completion of their federal compliance audits at our universities for the fiscal year ending in June of 2020. Also included was the fiscal year 2021 full-time equivalent student enrollment report, and there were no reportable incidents. We also reviewed the written activity reports submitted by the university's internal audit review board chairs and chief audit executives, and received summary comments from each of them. In total, we reviewed 8 internal audit reports and discussed all of the progress being made in each of those. In our June board meeting, I reported that the board wanted to implement some changes that would change the way we conduct our reports and provide greater range of information and insight into the activity at all of the audit committees or the audits at the universities. It's under the heading of continuous improvement. The changes have been implemented. We now, as a board, have greater insight into the work of our audit committees. And we also see and appreciate the challenges that those committees have in seeing their audits through the implementation phase. It's not just taking a look at what is going on in a given area, but it's following through the changes that were recommended to make sure that the university has in fact repositioned itself to be more effective. And so that is a great improvement for us. The audit committee then reviewed and approved revisions to ABOR policy 3-104 titled the audit committee. These changes were recommended by the Auditor General during their sunset review of ABOR. The revisions require university chief risk officers to present their enterprise risk management programs to the committee annually. The consent agenda item number 21 today in today's board meeting book included these revisions policy that we forwarded for first read. Finally, we had a wonderful report from the University of Arizona Enterprise Risk Management Program. The presentation, pardon me, was given by University of Arizona Chief Risk Officer Steve Holland and Chief Financial Officer Lisa Rolney. The presentation provided an overview of Arizona's ERM program, one that we're adopting at all three universities. I think this is a huge step forward in our ability to have insight into what's happening on our campuses that could really be a risk to our future success. Their presentation provided a baseline for the other universities to look at and work with University of Arizona to ensure that we have top-notch programs at all three universities. Madam Chair, this concludes the audit committee's report.
Thank you, Regent Zuckerman. We are now going to take a 20-minute break. We will come back at, let's just call it 3 o'clock.
Well, good afternoon, Regents. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to give you an update on the state of the University of Arizona. Kendall is one of our recent graduates who we thought it was really appropriate to honor our military service, and she was the Army ROTC battalion commander, and also gives me an opportunity to thank General Shootman for his service to our country as the governor did, and on this board to higher education, Tucson community. And Ron, thank you so much for everything you've done to support us, and you along with Regent Ridenauer, who I see over there on the screen, have to look over, chaired the committee that brought me here to Arizona, and I will always be grateful to you for giving me this opportunity. This first slide, it's a drone view of the steps of Old Main looking eastward. It was the first time in 100 years that we've had a commencement ceremony in front of Old Main. I know the presidential events group is probably not happy for me to hear me say this. And people love it in the stadium. We get fireworks and all that. But this was really special. And we did this on homecoming weekend to give the 2020 graduates who did not have a chance to walk across the stage and get their degree to come back home and to participate. We had over 1,000. And I'll tell you, it's one of the highlights of the time I've been here to be able to do this on the mall in front of Old Main. I wanted to start out the presentation by reading you our land acknowledgement statement. We respectfully acknowledge that the University of Arizona is on the land and territories of indigenous peoples. Today, Arizona is home to 22 federally recognized tribes, with Tucson being the home to the O'odham and the Yaqui. Committed to diversity and inclusion, the university strives to build sustainable relationships with sovereign Native nations and indigenous communities through education offerings, partnerships, and community service. So I want to thank Levi Askera. Sorry, President Cruz Rivera. He came down from Flagstaff, and he has been tremendous leader for our institution, along with
Karen Francis Begay, who worked with all of the Native nations to come up with this, this very important land acknowledgement statement. So I'm not sure how much time we really have. We got a little head start. So of course we'll fill the time if you allow us. But I was planning on just, usually it's 3 hours of me just talking, and we get 75 minutes today. So we're going to move at a very fast pace. I would invite Dr. Cantwell and Dr. Dake maybe up to the table, because I'm going to give some opening comments, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Cantwell to talk about research, innovation, and impact, and the incredible great work we have going on there that she leads. And again, President Crow, thank you for allowing the transfer of Dr. Cantwell from ASU to the U of A. And then Dr. Dake will give an update on the University of Arizona Health Sciences. So I'll start out by reminding the Regents in the first one of these that I did with our strategic plan, we're still on track. This is sort of the dashboard of the 5 pillars that we have to our strategic plan. Most of the initiatives, over half the initiatives, is in the first pillar, the Wildcat Journey, student success. More than half of our initiatives are focused there, and I'll have more comments about student success. But I don't know how much time the Regents have had to walk around our beautiful campus, but we're in the final stages of completing the Student Success District, which is going to be tremendous. It brings together our main library now with maker space and an incredible studio there for students. President Crow, I reluctantly, I don't know if this will ever get posted, but I did my first TikTok video with a couple of students yesterday. I'm not sure that that was a good idea, but
I don't even know what it is.
yeah, me either. They showed me one that Dr. Phil did, and I go, yeah, I don't think I want to do that. But I was a good sport. And then the second pillar is around grant challenges. This is our research initiatives, and Dr. Cantwell will talk more about the plan for research. The third pillar is around Arizona Advantage. And this one, I'm particularly proud of the work that Dr. Marla Franco has done by securing the designation as a Hispanic serving institution. And also in our strategic plan, there are specific initiatives around the Native nations. And we just had in this room a few weeks ago a Native American summit with tribal leaders from Oregon, Washington, Oklahoma, and here in Arizona. I would say that I'll get to our students, but 44% of our students at the university self-identify as students of color, and almost a third Pell eligible. Arizona Global, led by Brent White, now up to 5,400 students, 13 micro campuses around the world, 4 in China, and working on new micro campuses in Morocco, Kazakhstan, and Russia. I forgot that I just missed the last pillar there. Can I go back? Wow, I can go back. So the last one is Lisa Rolney and her team have been really important in leading this around operational efficiency for the university and institutional excellence. And that's something that I think we've got lots of opportunity on, many initiatives in the strategic plan, and we're tracking that. And we'll give you detailed updates every year on where we are with our initiatives, what the strategies are, the tactics to achieve those strategies, and the metrics of success. Casey Urquidez, I think I see Casey back there. Hey, Casey. She is just a wildcat for life through and through, and she leads our effort in student recruitment, and her team has done a tremendous job. This is the largest number of students we've ever had at the University of Arizona, almost 50,000. We have the most academically prepared and the most diverse class that Casey's ever brought to the university, with over half of our students having at least a 3.75 GPA. And I think well over 1,000 students with a perfect 4.0 GPA. As we look forward, when I first got here, I didn't think that we would be growing. I thought actually we needed to think about maybe with the footprint that we have, maybe contracting a little bit. But I have seen the light and understand that it's really important to us to continue to grow. And I would say most of the growth that we've seen, certainly in the last year, has been the return of our international students and our out-of-state students, but also tremendous growth in online. And I'm really appreciative to the provost for recruiting Dr. Craig Wilson, who's come in and has done a great job with our online enrollment and programs there. We're also proud. I said that, you know, at the 5-year mark, if we didn't hit the top U.S. News and World top 100 and a top 50 public university, that I was going to resign. Luckily, we just got in under the wire. We hit 99, I think, last year in the top 100 and 46 as a public. So I can keep going, hopefully, for a couple more years. We're a top 20 research university, and really, as the opening video said, we're really a good university serving veterans that ranked in the top 20 nationally for all universities. So we're really proud of that. And here's some other rankings. I won't dwell on this too much, but just to point out, as we had a discussion earlier in the EEC meeting about, we've got incredible resources here in the state around water resources and research efforts and that, along with ASU. So and NAU, certainly with their programs in forestry, and that's such an important point to our state. And as we look for ways as public universities to improve the state and the economy, certainly that's one area that I think we can be incredibly helpful. I do like that since Craig Wilson has been here, our rankings in online, when I first arrived, there were about 4,000 online students. And I said, well, how does ASU have 10 times the number of online students we have? And we're slowly moving, but I think we're at about 10,000 now. But our rankings and the quality of the programs have dramatically increased, and we're now ranked number 7 in the country. This is our retention rate. This is another thing that I focused on in that first OFR. Notice we're not calling this an OFR. This is the State of the University update. But I have to give President, I always want to make you president. Provost folks, it's a Freudian slip. Provost folks and her team did an incredible job around retention. This was one that I highlighted early on, retention and graduation rates. And the next slide, I'll put a little finer point on this. But, you know, we had incredible challenges during the pandemic. And the number that of 84% was our actual. Our goal was 82.5. So thank you, Provost folks and your team for getting us to that number. Nowhere near, even though we project out what we aspire to achieve. My goal, and I think I told you this 4 years ago, is that we need to be at 90% at least retention to be on par with our peers. If you look at our graduation rate, we do fairly well with 4-year graduation rate. We're still lagging behind at about 65% for the 6-year graduation rate. I think just like the retention goal should be 90%, I think our six-year graduation rate should be north of 70%. And I really like, and I know the provost and I talked about this morning, we're really focused on four-year graduation goals. And I would certainly like to see that north of 60% and set the expectation. I love what she told me this morning. When students arrive next fall, we're gonna talk to them about being the class of 2026 and start setting that expectation early on. This one, there were a couple of things when I was hired. One is focus on the Banner relationship in the health sciences. You're going to hear more from Dr. Day. We won't talk as much about Banner, but I would say, we're in a 30-year agreement with Banner, and I think our relationship with Banner now is as good as it's ever been since I arrived. And I'm really appreciative to Dr. Dake and the deans of the medical school for that. The other thing I was, and I'm looking over at you, Regent Rydenor, because you drove this point home. You got to focus on the endowment, and you've got to focus on getting the word out to the world about how great the University of Arizona is. So this is from Steve Moore's group in marketing communications around targeted wonder and other campaigns that have really honed in on using analytics and looking at, we're between California and Texas. So the obvious places for us to look for students outside of Arizona would be in these two states. And so from the Bay Area to LA to San Diego and 4 areas in Texas, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. So we've done a good job there. And these are the results. We've increased almost 1,000 out-of-state, domestic out-of-state students in enrollment. And certainly Casey's done a great job and her team. And we've actually gone to high schools and visited. And I hope this spring we can get back on the road and do the same thing, targeted to these areas. And that return on investments, I think, is a really good number to highlight, because for every dollar that Steve and his team spent, we think we get about a 9x return on that investment in marketing to these zip codes. In terms of fundraising, I don't think JP Rosniak is here, but I really want to thank him and his team at the foundation. They've done an incredible job. You can see that during 2020, we had a little bit of a dip, but for 3 of the 4 years, we've exceeded $300 million in philanthropic fundraising. And we have a goal of 350 this year. We're very confident we're going to hit that. We were up to 345 last year, and a couple of big gifts didn't get credited before the end of the year that are going to show up in this year's number. But we're very confident we'll hit the $350 million number this year. But our goal is to be at $400 million a year. And I think that's going to be something we're going to have to work hard at, but incredibly grateful to the alums and the people who love the University of Arizona. Actually, a lot of our gifts come from individuals who just sort of adopted the U of A and didn't actually go to school here. That's always nice. Here are the colleges that we've had 2 recent naming gifts. Certainly want to thank Bill Franke and his family for a recent very generous gift to name our honors college. Remember, there was some concern when I arrived if we were even going to be able to build this honors college. And so I'm appreciative to the Regents and everyone for supporting us building this honors village, and certainly to Bill Franke and his family for this generous gift. And then Ken Coit, during homecoming, we just announced a large gift to name our College of Pharmacy. Certainly Jim Wyatt and his incredible dedication to this university and his gift around optical sciences. And the other colleges that have been named. My goal would be is to have naming of every one of our colleges. My time is running short, but I think it's a realistic goal. We're in the process of talking to several donors about 2 or 3 additional colleges. And I hope in the next year or so, we can come back and give you some good news on those asks that we have out. And there's been an intentional and strategic new direction for the foundation around having gifts go to the endowment for endowed professors, for endowed research funds, and scholarships. We're really focused on, as we talk about not having enough support for our students, we're really focusing on, and if you look at all these recent gifts, a lot of that are endowed scholarship funds, and we're really happy about the direction that that's going. And I keep looking over at Regent Roddenauer. Are you still there? Nice to see you. But, you know, one of the things that we said was we were going to grow the endowment to $1 billion. And he said, that's not big enough. It needs to be $2 billion. So, you know, I said 10 years, Regent Roddenauer and Regent Schutman. So I'm sort of halfway through, and we did hit $1 billion this year. Now, to be fair about it, all universities and all investment funds had a really good return that got us over that $1 billion hump. So I think the goal would be in the next year to hit 1.5. And Regent Roddenauer, I'm not going to let you down. We're going to get to 2 billion in our endowment. Switching gears quickly because I'm sort of out of my time, but I just wanted to highlight, and again, I go back to Casey and her team of what we're doing out in the community, particularly in South Tucson and the Sunnyside Unified School District. There are 2 of Casey's staff that are embedded in the district, and they work very closely with the superintendent and the principals of these schools. Embedded in to help families and students get ready to come hopefully to the U of A or to some college somewhere. And this program is going to be expanded, and we think this is a tremendous thing that we can do for the community to help. Now, I just wanted to remind everyone about the bridges. So this is a schematic of the bridges here we are just south on the way to the airport. I've driven by that place hundreds of times, and I remember Regent Schutman and I, even before I started, we went down to Rita Road, and then he showed me the bridges, and there was nothing there. Now there's some buildings. You know, Dr. Cantwell and her team and Carol Stewart at our research parks. The refinery building is going up and hopefully will be occupied very soon. Lisa Rolney has done a great job of finding a donor and moving Arizona Public Media into this corner of the bridges. There are more things. There's a Geico building there and others. I just wanted to highlight there's the JTED school that's down in this zone, and to tell you about something that I think is that I talked about when I first arrived, which would be a high school. And we're partnering with JTED. We're not quite ready. This is a little premature in talking about this, but I'm so excited that we've gotten traction with JTED and some donors to establish a high school that is focused on the health sciences. This was something that we had at Texas Medical Center that Dr. DeBakey established back in 1972. And it was really serving the 4th Ward of Houston for those individuals to help them get into careers in the health sciences. Over 50 years, of course, it's really turned into a magnet school in Houston for everyone who wants to go to medical school and beyond just x-ray techs and phlebotomists. But we think this is going to be really good to serve the South Tucson community along with these programs that we have embedded in the high schools to open the students' eyes to the fact that not only can you go to college and not only can you get a job in healthcare, but actually if you choose to go to medical school, we're going to work with JTED along with Chancellor Lambert and Pima Community College to really hopefully make this thing go within the next year or two. I think it'll be tremendous. And this is my last slide. I just wanted to highlight that in terms of research expenditures, and Dr. Cantwell will pick it up from here. But we're overall ranked number 34 in the country in terms of research expenditures, number 19 in terms of public universities. We're almost at 800 million. And again, one of the other things was get the endowment to $1 billion, get research expenditures to $1 billion. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Cantwell, who can take it from here and talk about our road to $1 billion of research expenditures. And we've got time built in at the end for questions, or I'll take questions now.
So I think what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, Dr. Campbell, before we start on to the research specific, is ask if the Regents have any questions or comments for President Robbins.
Thanks, Chairman. And President Robbins, there's much to laud in what you've just said, really a lot to praise, but I'll just make two comments. First, in 2015, when I came on this board, I went to the president's office before you got here and said, you must have an honors college that is robust and named. You built the building over the objections of the city at times.
And some state legislators.
Yep. And you named this college. I just think it's absolutely wonderful. It needed to be done.
Thank you for setting the bar for us.
You did it. Secondly, I'm glad you weren't 101 in the U.S. News and World Report.
We're actually 103.
No, 99 is what I've been. I'm glad this year you weren't 101.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Regent Schumann?
When we drove through the bridges and it was literally a vacant lot, we talked about the potential for building a knowledge-based economy in Southern Arizona. Thanks to your leadership and those you selected to go in there, we now have buildings that are creating excitement and opportunity. The growth of that whole fourth industrial revolution idea is being embodied in what we're seeing there. Great work. It's my honor to serve on the Campus Research Corp board. And we served together for a couple of years, and the great work that Carol's doing there and Betsy's doing. I tell you, I'm excited for the future of Southern Arizona and our ability to take what's going on in the university and translate it to the economy in tangible ways. And that's what's happening. And I don't think it would have happened without you. So thank you, President Robbins.
Well, it wouldn't have happened without Dr. Cantwell having the good wisdom to go hire Carol Stewart, and it's a dynamic duo. So any other questions, or I'll turn it over to Dr. Cantwell.
So Chairman Manson, Dr. Robbins, just a comment. As a Wildcat for life, I am so impressed with the job that you've done over the 4.5, 5+ years. I'm still involved in almost every facet of the University of Arizona in one way or the other, be it law school or committees or whatever. And what has really changed, I think, over the past few years is the perception of the University of Arizona. And, I think the perception was it's a great university, but it's not sure where it's going. And that perception has completely changed. And so you will find among all of us alumni a new appreciation of the university and where it's going, and an excitement. So for the first time in a long time, we are looking forward to the future and not the past.
Thank you, Regent Ridenour. We're all sad you're not here with us, but we'll see you soon. And I didn't even talk about athletics. We have hired 5 new head coaches in football, men's basketball, softball, soccer, in baseball. And I would tell you, I think every one of them has absolutely changed the culture of those teams. And maybe the best thing that we did in athletics is we were able to retain Coach Barnes to stay and coach our women's team. So, you know, thank you for keeping your eye on athletics as well.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Dr. Campbell, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Regent Manson. And I have to say that it's ridiculously pleasing to have you all here in person. Like, I don't know that that will last, but it's really quite lovely. So thank you for joining us here. I'm going to go pretty fast because I really would like for you all to hear as much as possible about the state of our health sciences. And that's a huge piece of our research. So I'm going to give you kind of a one over the world of what we are doing. There's a lot of complexity here. And Regent Manson, I'll let you choose between whether I should answer questions or wait until after Dr. Date goes. I think we'll have plenty of time. So we've told you this before. At the research, the highest level, our kind of mantra about research is our goal is to make Arizona the resilient state. We aim to create a world where human potential is realized. We're all working together to create solutions to big problems so that our communities in Arizona can thrive. And there are three areas here I'll point to just for the purposes of this meeting. There's a lot more going on, but you know, we've created the Arizona Institutes for Resilience, which is an amalgamation of all of our research capacity and resilience, which was sort of a lot of points of light out there. And are focusing very strongly within that institute on transdisciplinary approaches to complex problems, many of which are in Arizona. But in that context, I wanted to point out one strategic hire that we've made, which is an associate vice president for resilience and international development. We hired a guy named Greg Collins. Greg built a $15 billion program within USAID to do resilience, the delivery of resilience solutions globally. And his expertise for us is really looking at that intersection between basic research, applied research, and delivering that into places, boots on the ground, where it can make a real difference. On the economy, you've heard a lot about our investments through the New Economy Initiative. I'm not going to go into real detail there, except to say that you all know this, and we will bring on the research side every year a set of measurements of how well those dollars invested have delivered whatever it is that they've delivered. They may be workforce related, they may be research related. We will do that. The other thing I think I'll point to there, I do have a slide on this, is the impact of our startups. So I'll talk to you about that. And then the Arizona Forge, which is a relatively new unit that stands for Finding Opportunities and Resources to Grow Entrepreneurs, which focuses on entrepreneurial mindset, both amongst our students and our faculty and our communities. And I'll talk a little bit at the very end about how that can really be delivered to our communities. On the workforce side, you know about the new School of Mining and Mineral Resources. We are a top producer of Fulbright scholars. What that means is that we have a large number of faculty who are invited to become Fulbright researchers in other countries who come back and bring that global engagement and that knowledge back to our campus and deliver it here. I think the last thing I'll say, because this is really something for us to be proud of, is that the latest data from the NSF shows that we are among the nation's leaders in delivering doctoral degrees to our Native American and Hispanic students. And that is not merely a point of pride for us, that is why we are here. So we've talked about this, I will go over it pretty quickly, but we are not a university that is materially growing our number of research active faculty. So how do we grow research at the University of Arizona? We focus on stimulating the research capacity of our early career faculty, making them research active as early as possible in their careers, going after larger bids, team-based bids, partner-based bids with large ROI. aligning with the Biden administration focus on multidisciplinary approaches, hiring mid-career faculty from other institutions, not our sister institutions, who bring research with them, and increasing industry interactions. And I always point out that that doesn't mean companies give us money. It means we become their partner and together go after some of, for instance, the largest bids that the federal government is putting together around regional hubs. So one of the ways that we do this at the University of Arizona is we actually have faculty who are incredibly productive amongst national academics and researchers. And we look at this number and we say, if our faculty are more sort of productive in the amount of awards that they win, how do we make them even more productive within the confines of what they are capable of doing? I like to show this. I've showed you a graph like this before because there is a limit to how much people just on average at a university like ours can do. And we are very mindful of not pushing beyond what our faculty can deliver, but thinking about research in the context of additional types of employees who can partnered with our most productive faculty, research faculty, for instance, as opposed to tenure track faculty, bring some of these large awards to our campus. I talked about expanding infrastructure. You know, we have a new Grand Challenges building. So we have, in addition to what's going in at the bridges that President Robbins talked about, we have 3 buildings that I'd like to point to because they're really genuinely impactful in what we'll be able to do going forward. The Grand Challenges Research Building, which is a $99 million research building scheduled for completion in 2024. This is already broken ground, will include research in optical sciences, space exploration, medical advancements, quantum network engineering, and the science of sound. Now, if those sound like they're all different, they are multidisciplinary endeavors in and of themselves and purpose brought into this building so that we have a multidisciplinary approach to the teams that are operating there. The Applied Research Building, which is an $85 million research building completed in January 2023, will house research programs in applied physical sciences and engineering, connecting faculty across 4 colleges, 8 departments. So there, again, this is more of an applied science, meaning there's a lot more engineering in the applied science, delivering the work that we do in the basic research world into commercial endpoints. That building is dedicated to that result. And then the old chem building, which also had so all 3 of these buildings ground broke this past year. For the old chem building is a $42 million renovation to the historic chemistry building, but will embody a whole new effort called the Commons that's dedicated to collaborative learning. So the common theme there is collaborative research across disciplines and collaborative learning, collaborative creation of new knowledge that doesn't get to a solution space without many different disciplines being involved. The last thing I'd like to talk about, because you hear me kind of harp on this, is foundational infrastructure. What does that mean at universities like ours? Public universities, land grant universities rely on research cores for all faculty to have access to. We do not build for each faculty member, each research member, a specific lab that has everything they need. We have all kinds of capacities. This university, the canonical one at this university is the Mirror Lab, around which our entire astronomy program has been built and will continue to be built. We have a lot of work to do here, and I personally am laser beam focused on that. So one of the things, the approaches we're taking, and we've done in the past 6 months, is to bring in an outside firm and actually do a very focused scope of work of 12 of our many research buildings to ask, what's the status of the cores that are in those buildings? What's the status of the spaces themselves? What can be done with what we've got? And how do we then understand what we need in the future? Switching gears a little bit to commercializing. I think you see these numbers in the TRIF reports that we have. A lot of our commercialization work is direct TRIF funded, but I do want to point out a couple of things. One is that coronavirus and pandemic notwithstanding, have really experienced solid growth in the commercialization of university inventions in the last year. That is not the same as many of our sister universities, where though as much of research-related work has slowed down. We've also launched 17 startups, which not only brings the work that we do in research, hopefully and largely to date this year, to startups that stay in Arizona, and as far as I'm concerned, need to stay in Southern Arizona, but each of those create jobs. So I'm going to tell you one story there. This is probably the only story I'll tell you, but it's really a useful TRIF related story. Raj Khanna, who's a faculty member in College of Medicine, Tucson, and pharmacy, has did research for actually many years on non-opioid compounds for pain relief, really to very critically target the opioid addiction problems in the state of Arizona. In 2016, he developed the basis for his first patent. In 2018, he started his own company and was awarded the license to utilize that patent to develop drugs. In 2019, he received funding, very substantial startup funding. That company, which is called Regulonics, is here in Tucson. And every aspect of that, from the research that Dr. Khanna conducted, to the cores that he was able to use in our Bio5 Institute and those buildings, to the support for Tech Launch Arizona, which has been critical to Dr. Khanna's ability to understand how to do this and to do it credibly, to the point where he's received Series A and Series B funding, has been TRIF funded. So that's really the piece I want to sort of leave you with, is that, and he continues to be a research active faculty member whose basic research continues to develop into intellectual property that can become future companies. One thing you'll hear, is again switching gears, from me a lot, is that we are focused on both undergraduate research experiences and essentially experiential learning for all of our undergraduates. This is just a little snapshot. These are all also TRIF funded. So this is a snapshot of where you see TRIF funding going into creating experiential learning opportunities. My personal goal, and I think the provost goal and a goal for our university, is that we expand our capacity to deliver research experiences for our undergraduates as fast and as much as possible, and that it becomes a core of the value proposition that we deliver to our undergraduates. So these are a few ways that we do that. I think Dr. Dake's going to talk about the accelerated pathways to medical education. I'd like to highlight Dr. Michael Johnson. On his own, he, as a brand new professor, he created and self-funded a program to bring underrepresented minority students who had no background in STEM to an 8-week program every summer, where he and his colleagues that he recruited personally worked with them to introduce them to STEM-related research experiences. All of those students, and this is now in its 3rd year, I think it is now NSF funded, so he is not doing this off his own back. He's got support, he's got facilities. All of those students stay in STEM and graduate from this university with a STEM degree. Now, albeit we only have 3 years but those are starting with students who are either juniors or seniors. So we're seeing incredible results from programs like that. And we're really committed to delivering those opportunities more and more. You'll hear a lot more from me in the future. I'm going to talk to you for a minute. I think it's really important for everyone to hear about our TRIF-enabled successes. There are many. I'm only going to talk to you about 3, and actually Dr. Dake will give you a lot more on the healthcare related side of things, which is a prodigious amount of success. First, we'll talk about the Aspara mission. You may have heard me talk about that, but it's one of the 4 inaugural NASA Astrophysics Pioneers missions. These are actually $20 million may seem like a lot, but these are kind of mid-scale missions. These are not the biggest NASA missions, but this particular mission was awarded to a postdoc who is now a faculty member, and really brought together a lot of capability at the university. And there are two things about that mission and that award that are important. One is that TRIF seed funded Dr. Vargas to build some of the capacities needed to actually win this award. And the other is that the support services embodied in the University of Arizona Space Institute are also TRIF funded activities that enabled him as a very early career person to acquire a large scale award like this. Switching gears some, Project Career is a HSI STEM initiative that's currently funded at $5 million from the Department of Education to really speed up and enhance our capacity to graduate Hispanic or low-income students in STEM fields. You will hear a theme here, which is that we are focused on how do we do this every method possible. But this was also TRIF funded using our TRIF workforce investments. We did seed funding with the faculty who are involved in this win, and they were able to turn that into an award. I will leave the health sciences approaches to Dr. Dake, but you will hear more about that. Switching gears again, I want to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in our new DC office. You all know that we recently had a grand opening. We actually opened the offices about a year ago. We had a grand opening in September. This space serves kind of as our East Coast extension. We have several entities that live there. The National Institutes for Civil Discourse, the University of Arizona Foundation has people that live there. I personally am there 1 week of every month, doing a host of things. I either bring agencies largely to the center and we do meetings there, or I use that as my base for going and talking to agencies in Washington. This particular picture is an example of bringing federal agencies to discuss recent events like the ones you see on the slide with us in our space. A couple of weeks ago, we brought a bipartisan group of 10 legislators, state legislators, to our DC Center to hear about the new regional hub opportunities and to learn about our health sciences and opportunities for NIH funding, because those are going to have any of those large scale wins for any of our universities in the state, we will need legislative attention. We can't just do it on our own. I'll talk about that in a minute. So just to continue that, the priorities for this administration are ones which it is at least my intention, and I'm sure that President Crow has equal intention amongst his people to bring some of those dollars to the state of Arizona. These are embodied across the NSF and its new directorate, the NIH and its new ARPA-H, the DOD, the DOE, and the Department of Commerce in the development across these agencies in this administration of large scale, what they're calling either regional hubs, regional bid opportunities that are meant to distribute more of the funding for the growth of innovation outside of the coasts where that funding has largely been concentrated for some period of time. We are deeply embedded in going after some of this work. I think the last thing I'll say on this is, I think most of you know this, but Arizona is what's described as a defense EPSCoR state, which means that our overall level of defense funding is lower than most of the rest of the states in the union. And it gives us, that's in basic research dollars. We are bringing the DoD EPSCoR regional hub meeting to Arizona in February, very specifically to ask the question, why is that the case? And why can't, I mean, we have phenomenal universities across the state who could be doing far more in defense basic research. Why aren't we getting more, essentially? I don't think we'll say that in the meeting, but that will be my focus at least. And then I want to just note that none of this means we're losing ground at all with some of our key federal funding agencies, namely NASA and the USDA. There's no dearth of our continued focus there. And I would love to spend a whole hour talking about our space related work, but I'm not going to do that. Let me just actually see if I can use the back button. This is a picture of the work that we did during pandemic with some of our native nations on water resilience. And we had a lot of pictures to choose from here, but this is the kind of preliminary work that can form the basis for winning some of these regional hubs. Water resilience is one that we know many agencies are going to focus on. 2 more slides. You've seen this one. Oops, I think I'm missing a slide. No, all right. Interesting. So you've seen this one from me before. And this says that we are on a path to $1 billion. And if we, the brown line that you see on this graph is what we call organic growth in our herd, meaning that's the same percentage growth. It's still prodigious. It's still difficult. It's still being done with the same resources, but that's where we would go if we don't have added resources. And I'm going to talk about how we're going to get there. But we have a gap between where we can get in this organic fashion and where we have to go to reach $1 billion. So there are a few things we're doing to get there. Dr. Dake will speak very directly to the health sciences component of this. My point is that each of our units are developing their own strategies for their component of how they fill that gap between where we could get to and $1 billion, which is about 125 million if we want to get there by 2025 or even 2026, really. So right now we have the College of Engineering immediately engaged in the development of their strategy. And just to point out that they do have an intention to grow by about 50 new tenure and tenure eligible faculty by 2026. The College of Applied Science and Technology, which is our Sierra Vista campus, has remarkable capacity in cybersecurity and defense research and has put a beautiful strategy together to grow from what is about $1 million a year in annual herd to 20. And then our College of Science is engaged in their own strategy. So you will hear a lot more about this down and dirty into their strategies, but everybody is taking responsibility for their component of that. So the last thing I'll say is really focused on the strategies for investing additional funding that we can acquire through donor means. There are a lot of ways to do this, but they are beyond the TRIF and the other stimulative funding that we have at the moment. And what I'm showing here is at this intersection between anything that would grow research for us, anywhere we're really good, and what would provide real value to the state of Arizona. And the listings that you see on the right are really areas where we already have engagement with state agencies or other components of the state and have plans in place to move out. I want to highlight a couple of things here. One is delivering innovation services to the cooperative extension offices. This is something that's been an aspiration of mine for a really long time. And it really says, how do we take both the Forge entrepreneurial mindset capabilities, all of the work that Tech Launch Arizona can do, and even the work in the UA Center for Innovation that the tech parks do, and actually take it to each and every one of our cooperative extension offices in every county in Arizona. You know that the engineering college is seeking to grow. They're really focused on fourth industrial revolution, and we are looking in autonomy and sensors and AI, the Internet of Things, software development and biomedical very, very carefully at growing for those sectors of the economy that are growing. So growing workforce for those sectors of the economy that are growing in Arizona. Dr. Dake will talk about health sciences, and you've heard me talk a little bit about where and how we are focusing on opioid and addiction management. The Institutes for Data and Computing Resilience will really be focused on cyber workforce, data and computing for the information and economic security of the state, as well as the prodigious data challenges that our own state agencies have in not just managing their data, but understanding as much as possible from that information. And then water, I don't know that I need to even bring it up, but we have water resilience, water policy, and water reuse technologies, cooperative work with state agencies, and great plans for how we would do that in the future. So that is the end of what I would either answer questions now or wait until Dr. Dake has gone, and then have us both sort of field research questions on either side.
I think I'd like to give the Regents a chance to ask you some specific questions before we get to the health sciences, just because I think there'll be a number of questions on the health sciences and I don't want this.
You don't want me to get lost. Bless you.
So do we have comments or questions?
A comment.
Regent Herbal?
That is an impressive set of examples of TRIF in action. And we need to capture those kinds of things. You make a great salesperson for TRIF, and we need to capture that enthusiasm as well as robust examples from our other universities as well. Hats off to you. Terrific job.
And if I might, Regent Herbold, I think we talked about this in our one-on-one. We are just finishing up the finalization of kind of really a TRIF-focused website, which, as I've said before, the Regents will see before we go live with it to make sure that it meets all of our sort of requirements. But we are really close to being able to push that out and open it up publicly, which is one of many ways that we seek to tell these stories more publicly.
Any other comments or questions from the board? No, I think, as I said before, Betsy, when you speak, it becomes alive. And it's obvious that you have a very, very deep grasp of this and involvement in this. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. It's
thank you, Regent Mance.
Incredible. All right, Dr. Dick, the floor is yours.
Great. Well, I know it's been some time since I've had a chance to join you and tell the story of the health sciences at the University of Arizona. So on behalf of all those dedicated to the health sciences, I really appreciate this opportunity. I know there are a number of new regents, so I thought it might be beneficial to share some basic facts about the health sciences so you know what we represent. The University of Arizona Health Sciences was established in 1967, which is the same year that the School of Medicine in Tucson was founded. It comprises 5 colleges: College of Medicine Phoenix, College of Medicine Tucson, College of Nursing, the Mel and Enid Zuckerman College of Public Health, and the recently named Arkan Coit College of Pharmacy. Our annual expenditures are $745 million a year in total, with the UAHS component $184 million. The initial intent of the UAHS is to really serve as an overarching entity to foster collaboration and synergistic efforts and avoid siloing within the health sciences so that we can take full advantage of all our expertise. In terms of the $184 million that is directed through UAHS, these expenditures track to a number of programs that I'll share with you in a second. You can see the grant and contract revenue represents 54%, budget allocation, state appropriation 16%, and 10% comes from grant tuition revenues. As I mentioned, our $184 million that is comes through that we're expending comes through the UAHS through 12 centers and programs. Comprises 4,000 students, 900 faculty members, more than $220 million in annual research awards. And in fiscal year 21, the health sciences and the health sciences colleges generated $47.8 million in indirect cost recovery, which represents 48% of the total U of A cost recovery of $99 million. My remarks I want this afternoon serve 2 purposes. First, I would like to provide a year in review update focused on research growth and the future of health science education. And the second goal is to look forward to 2022 at some of our new economy initiatives and present our planning in terms of workforce development, distinctively Arizona plans, and new economy centers. If there's any time remaining, we may tell a good story about our response to COVID. Research growth. This illustrates research awards that are color-coded by units from 2013 to 2021. You can see consistent year-over-year growth accelerating over the last 5 years. And since 2016, research awards have increased by $100 million. This may be a little easier with numbers numerically, and it accounts for the progress and documents that over the last 6 years, there's been a doubling of awards at the College of Medicine's both Phoenix and Tucson. such that, again, our grand total of $221 million in research awards in the health sciences. This looks specifically at NIH award totals. This comes from Blue Ridge. That's exclusively NIH, which actually just closed its books the 1st of October. The new Blue Ridge rankings will come out in January, and we can provide numbers at that point. The College of Medicine Tucson has grown 120% since 2016, and it's 45th among 155 MD granting institutions, up 2 spots from last year. And again, I think this is an impressive growth curve over the recent years. Let's talk a bit about health sciences education. I'll go college by college. As I mentioned, the College of Medicine Tucson was founded in 1967. Currently, we have 120 students per class. Last year, there were 8,636 applicants. That gives us a yield of 1.3%. The annual expenditures are $333 million. Some highlights from 2021, we started a clinical trials network that was established to allow patients access to U of A clinical studies throughout all our departments within their community, their local community, working with their own personal physicians, and the initial sites under contract are Yuma, Kingman, Globe, and the Phoenix VA. In addition, we recently received notification that we received an NIH award, the prestigious Medical Science Training Program, MSTP. It's a T32 grant to support our combined MD PhD programs. Our MD PhD programs have continued to grow such that we now have 34 students at ComT and 8 MD PhD students at ComP. The program is designed to train students planning careers in academic medicine and biomedical research. And it's the only such award in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah. And it's one of only 3 awards received by Hispanic serving institutions. The other 2 are UT San Antonio and UC Irvine. College of Medicine Phoenix. Our most recent college, founded in 2007 with 24 students. We now have grown over the last year, so we now are having the same number of first-year students as Tucson, 120. They had 6,691 applicants for a yield of 1.8%, and their annual expenditures are $114 million. We just started a new shared research facility with the Phoenix VA, and this is indeed very exciting for us because it will accelerate personalized treatments for veterans. In addition, we've developed a DoD-funded rapid response biohazard exposure testing program for soldiers and a new family medicine program and residency program in North County. This again will help serve rural communities in northern Arizona. College of Nursing, founded in 1957 with annual expenditures of $29 million. It's ranked #1 in Arizona for its BSN program, number 23 nationally, and number 16 among public universities by U.S. News and World Report. We launched 3 new pathways in 2021 in the master's program, one in clinical systems leadership, another in nursing education, and another in global nursing leadership. And we had our first class graduate in the new Gilbert-based BS in integrative health. That's the first such program in the country. In terms of public health, the Melanita Zuckerman College of Public Health, founded in the year 2000, has expenditures of $41 million. This has been, during the COVID pandemic, as you can imagine, a whirlwind site of intense activity and public attention, and the source of public information and community education, not only locally, but nationally. We're involved in a 2-year Arizona cohort study underway to research long COVID with the goal to include 10,000 infected and non-infected Arizonans. Again, a large growth in terms of new opportunities for education, in terms of new majors, new minors, certificates, and graduate studies. College of Pharmacy. It's our oldest college, founded in 1947, annual expenditures of $42 million. We recently received a principal level gift for naming. We're very proud of its new title, the R. Ken Coit College of Pharmacy. This endowed 6 chairs as part of the strategic growth plan of Dean Rick Schnellman. Currently, we're ranked number 20 nationally. but I think you can expect to see a dramatic climb in our ranking, fueled by the new resources that will enable Dean Schnellman's strategic growth plan. Let's look specifically at some, I think, quite distinctive College of Medicine programs that are destined to impact medical education by reducing debt and creating opportunities. We've talked once before about the debt that medical students, their burden when they graduate, of being about $200,000 per student. In 2019, the legislature supported us with the creation of a primary care physician scholarship program designed to decrease student debt and increase primary care physicians in underserved areas. This is a win-win for the state. Students who agree to practice in an underserved rural or urban healthcare area in Arizona, of which 45 of those designated areas are underserved, in one of the 7 primary care specialties will receive a year-for-year tuition benefit. Right now, we have 82 students taking advantage of this program with full tuition. 45 in Tucson, 37 in Phoenix. Another new program is the Accelerated Pathway to Medical Education. This is intended to reduce debt by cutting down the time for a degree in a medical degree. And we're now accepting students directly out of high school with our first inaugural class commencing this fall. We had over 100 applications. We were going to accept 5 high school students from Arizona, and the talent was so great that we accepted 6, 2 Flint scholars, 2 from underrepresented minorities, and we're able to now attract and be very competitive for the best students that the state produces. 2 other programs, the Quidel Health Science Scholar Program that we created this year to aid our diversity recruiting efforts to attract students from underrepresented populations for graduate study in all 5 of the Arizona Health Sciences colleges. This gives our deans a tool to attract those underrepresented populations, students that we think can be very, very instrumental in helping our programs. And finally, the HEAP program, which is an Honors College Assurance Program, which takes up to 10 students a year from the Honors College, gives them admission to the College of Medicine after the end of their junior year. It's a program that's, I think, is going to be very attractive to students. Looking overall at the new degree opportunities that have been stood up just in the last year alone, you can see dual degree opportunities, graduate degrees, undergraduate degrees, certificates throughout all 5 colleges. I'd like to highlight just 2 of them. One is the dual degree in PharmD and nurse practitioner. It's a new interprofessional program that's going to create providers able to address gaps in care in underserved areas under the directorship of Dean Rick Schnellman. This is clearly something that I think is perfect to address underrepresented areas that are in our state where we're not able to really have good care provided. The PharmD nurse practitioner is going to be a new type of care deliverer that will be able to go out in the rural communities and provide care. The other program I wanted to highlight was a BS in medicine. By the way, that last program is unique in the country. There's no other program like that. Likewise, there's no other program that offers a BS in medicine. This is a new Bachelor of Science in Medicine degree. Doesn't mean you go out and practice medicine, but will expose students in their undergraduate training to the full spectrum of opportunities in healthcare and healthcare careers. Under the directorship of the Vice Dean of Education, Kevin Moynihan, we'll be launching that in the fall of 2022. And we expect this will ramp up to approximately 4,000 students, which will make it one of the largest undergraduate degree programs on campus. Looking at innovation education programs, this year we had our first graduating class in health science design. This is designed to expand our workforce and address practitioner shortages. This program uses design thinking, if you will, and human-centered processes to creatively address complex health problems. Our initial class included bioengineering and speech, language, and hearing science students.
The work on projects is including kidney stone prevention, next generation hearing aid, and you can see one of those hearing aid designs on the screen above, and improved vaccine delivery measures. Right now, we have multiple course offerings that stem from just that first one in the spring. Health Tech Connect. This is an initiative to advance healthcare technology in Arizona. It was introduced in Phoenix to elevate Phoenix's reputation as an emerging center for biomedical innovation and collaboration. Our inaugural event was in September, and it's already yielded 2 new healthcare technology partnerships and projects for the university. If you're interested, our next hybrid in-person virtual event will be at the Phoenix Biomedical Campus coming up on December 3rd. We've also had the opportunity on embarking on new international initiatives in 2021. One of them is the Health Sciences Global and Online program that launched recently and will offer graduate certificate programs in innovations in aging starting in the fall 2021, and then moving to a master's program in the spring 2022. We also have a new nursing program with the University of Sonora Hermosillo. This is a master's in nursing program, which will launch January of next year with an initial cohort of 24 students. This will get these students who are Mexican nationals an opportunity to create a career pathway for international nurses and address bilingual and clinical partner needs of Banner Health. Students in Mexico who have a BA degree will be tested in English proficiency, then take the first year of the master's in nursing online in Mexico, and then come up to the US and in Arizona, work at Banner. And if they pass the state board in nursing, they will have a guaranteed job at Banner with all their visas taken care of. And the final program is a dual medical degree program intended to address shortages in physicians. Shortage in nurses, I might make, is 16,000 projected by 2025. Primary care is over 1,800. We just do not have enough programs to train healthcare providers. This dual medical degree program, which is joined between CompT and CompE, it's a joint program which is partnered with the University of Western Australia in Perth, will provide basic science education in Perth and clinical training in Arizona with an initial class of 75 students. I'd like to turn now to new economy initiatives. New economy initiatives are a state legislative desire to fund Arizona's public universities to develop a skilled, diverse workforce and to enhance economic opportunities. The funds assigned to the U of A this year include UA initiatives that leverage existing strengths to pursue workforce expansion in the health sciences and catalyze economic development in healthcare technology. I'd like to go through some of them. In terms of expanding workforce, we have 3 programs that we're creating in high impact areas that will help address the critical workforce shortages in the state. We now have new leaders in place and are working towards accreditation with the expectation of accepting our first class of students in the near future. Our director of the PA program is Kevin Larney. Kevin was the previous program director at the University of Southern California. Our director of physical therapy is Christine Childers, who is the program director in San Diego, and our director of a certified nurse midwife program, and there's no certified nurse midwife program in all of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Nevada, is Erin McMahon, who is the specialty director of nurse midwives at Yale. Arizona is unique, and we're proud to develop distinctly Arizona programs to address the need of our citizens. One such example is the Valley Fever Collaborative. 2/3 of all U.S. valley fever infections are contracted in Arizona. This initiative will support a collaborative effort between Arizona's 3 state universities that will focus on the development of precision medicine approaches, drug and vaccine development, and environmental risk abatement to reduce the financial cost and human burden of valley fever. In October 2021, the Valley Fever Center announced a successful species-specific trial that studied a vaccine for dogs to protect against valley fever. Now the next goal is to translate this to humans. Melanoma and skin cancer. Skin cancer is the most common of all cancer types. With 3.5 million cancers of non-melanoma skin cancer diagnosed in the US last year, it outweighs the diagnosis of all other cancers combined. We are now creating a database led by Clara Curiel, who's a former Arizona Research of the Year. This initiative will build the only state registry database on melanoma and non-melanoma skin cancers and will enable us to build a robust clinical data imaging and tissue infrastructure to create AI algorithms that will support the development of biomarker discovery for the risk stratification and new targets for prognostic markers and therapeutic interventions. I'd like to highlight the Institute for Future Health. This is a partnership between the U of A and ASU to improve health outcomes. The Institute for Future Health is a research hub to integrate the convergence of biomedicine, engineering, and computing in precision and digital health to optimize disease diagnosis and treatment, enhance wellness, and produce more cost-effective outcomes. We've already established collaborative teams and 4 specific areas of focus: neuro-COVID, long-term impact, pandemic preparedness, we're building a pandemic and disaster center of excellence, establishing new biomarkers for disease, especially focused on cancer, and mental health surveillance with a concentration on digital psychiatry. Addiction prevention. This is a particular concern at all levels of governments and a priority of our state, our governor, and the legislature. This initiative will work to expand the capabilities of the recently established U of A Health Sciences Comprehensive Pain and Addiction Center, directed by Todd Vanderoe. To date, although only recently established, the center has resulted in a 10x return on investment, total funds raised, including IDC, and has already produced 10 peer-reviewed publications. The Aegis Consortium. The Aegis Consortium is based on the University of Arizona Health Sciences and will use the knowledge gained from COVID-19 to predict and prepare for future pandemics. Under direction of Janko Nikolic-Zugic, the current Arizona Bio Researcher of the Year, the consortium will address gaps in pandemic preparedness across human experience, ranging from virology to immunology, communications and policy to behavior, economy, and the built and natural environments. To address these gaps, the consortium will create partnerships with universities, foundations, nonprofit entities, government agencies, and industry to better prepare for the next pandemic. The Center for Regenerative and Restorative Medicine. This is led by our Vice Dean of Research at the College of Medicine, Tucson, Jason Wertheim. The mission of the Center for Regenerative and Restorative Medicine is to catalyze research into a community that is focused on the development of cell-based technologies that diagnose disease or heal tissue. This is also an interest of our newly recruited ComT Chair of Surgery, Jeffrey Gertner, who's coming from Stanford. The objectives rely on research to build living cell-based therapies or products that enable function through biochemical and physical means that improve health, not just palliation, but return of function. And finally, we're very excited about this new center in Phoenix called CAMI, the Center for Advanced Molecular and Immunotherapies. CAMI investigators with faculty appointments at ComP, will collaborate with affiliate and associate researchers from leading local, regional, national, and international organizations focused on leading edge precision therapies. The idea here is to foster relationships and alliances with industry to accelerate progress in late stage development and commercialization of precision, personalized cell and gene-based therapies in 4 areas: cancer, autoimmune disease, infectious disease, and immune monitoring. Well, how are we going to grow U of A research to 1 billion? Well, in terms of the health sciences strategy, it's really threefold. And these 3 strategies interdigitate, included leveraging our existing expertise in residents. Strategy 2, building it really is collaboration in investing in infrastructure and people needed for large collaborative grants, Big problems certainly require collaboration and multidisciplinary contributions, and certainly to identify strategic opportunities that are congruent with societal and government priorities. We're now growing teams in key disciplines that match very nicely where we think the future of healthcare is headed and where our society and government interest lies. Looking at federal interest, opportunities from the White House proposal to invest $65 billion beyond vaccine and therapeutics in the American Pandemic Preparedness Plan certainly provide an opportunity. In addition, President Biden's budget request would fund the National Institutes of Health at $52 billion in fiscal year 2022, which is an increase of $9 billion or 21% above the fiscal year 2021 enacted levels. We clearly look forward to further definition on APPP and a new NIH budget. Of this $6.5 million that's included in the new NIH budget, this is $6.5 billion is earmarked for advanced research projects in the Agency for Health, the ARPA-H that Dr. Cantwell referred to. It's a new entity that would aim to drive transformational health research innovation and speed medical breakthroughs. And this is what it's focusing on: new priorities, impacting climate change and human health, and research to eliminate health disparities and improve health equity, as well as ongoing areas of interest: long-term health impacts on COVID-19, opioid public health crisis, maternal health, cancer, aging, neurological disorders, and heart, lung, and blood diseases. As you can see, these are absolutely congruent with our priorities. Do I have any time? 5 minutes. Okay, we can do it.
I think you want to have time for questions, though, right?
Well, are we 5 minutes before questions, or are we?
I think we're.
Well, we have until 4:35. You got extra minutes. So I think if you've got 5 minutes more, that'll leave us a few minutes for questions.
Okay, I'll go quickly. I just wanted to tell you about our response because I thought you might be interested. Our COVID response. In terms of testing, where is the virus? Diagnosed in COVID, we tested 321,000 patients with antigen and PCR at the U of A. Here you can see a snapshot from one of our dashboards. This just relates daily. In the most recent day, for example, last week, you can see that we had 801 tests with a percent positive 3.5%. And we then can give you the last 10 days, and you can see over the last few months what the number of tests performed has been. Also, we've been working on antibody testing. This has been great for us. We set up 40 sites across the state, at least one in every county. So far, we've had over 45,000 draws. And not only has this been good for the citizens of Arizona, but it's allowed the U of A to have some very exciting research studies. One of those is the HEROES study, which just garnered $15 million to continue its research into children, but also it's allowed us to really study antibody in patients, long-term effects, the effects in those who are immunocompromised with cancer. And this has allowed us to publish in such journals as Nature Medicine, Immunity, and New England Journal of Medicine just within the last year on this antibody effort. In terms of vaccinations, we've obviously, as you're well aware, have had a campus vaccination for both our university community, but also the Tucson and Pima community. In total, 242,960 doses were administered in our drive-through, which concluded in June, starting in January. The most on a given day was 4,406, but we averaged about 1,700 a day. Again, this was I think, a big help to our community. But we didn't just work in our community, work throughout the state through our public health and our mobile outreach vaccination education underserved population, or so-called Move Up program. The Move Up program utilizes 2 mobile units, mobile vans that go throughout the state. We had over 36 vaccinations, provided over 20 events across central and southern Arizona and along the border since February. Counties that we're focused on were Maricopa, Santa Cruz, Cochise, and Yuma. But we also had a very creative program at the U.S. ports of entry. These gentlemen on the right are farm workers, Mexican nationals who came across the border legally to work in farms in southern Arizona, and we vaccinated them at U.S. ports of entry at Douglas, Naco, San Luis, and Nogales, and that effort is still going on. But not just rural, also urban through the Street Medicine Phoenix program. The Street Medicine Phoenix program is a student-driven interprofessional healthcare team consisting of students and faculty from the U of A with a mission to ensure access to quality healthcare for Phoenix's homeless population living and sleeping in the streets. The premise of Street Medicine Phoenix is simple: bring the services to the people. Core work includes providing essential health screenings, acute medical care, health education, and information on community resources. In the time of COVID, this has been very instrumental in allowing homeless individuals to become vaccinated. Thank you.
Wow. I know. Where to start? Questions or comments from Regents? Regent Muffin.
Thank you, Chair Manson. Great information is a lot, and to digest it is a lot. But I have a question, if you can expand with that. The DoD funded biohazard with soldiers. Can you expand more about that? It was mentioned in one of your slides.
DOD.
Yeah, it was DoD.
The biohazard.
Biohazard.
Yes. So the DoD program coming out of Phoenix is basically a program to try and get early warning testing on soldiers who are exposed. That we expect to develop further DoD relationships and DARPA relationships through the Institute of Future Health. But that current program out of College Medicine Phoenix is especially looking at soldiers' exposure in the time of the pandemic.
Thank you. I have another question. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Okay. So you also have international program, specifically the nursing program with University of Sonora. So are you bringing the students here to continue practicing and potentially stay working with the H-1B visa? Something you mentioned about working at Banner?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a program that's between Banner, an agency called Annex, and University of Sonora Hermosillo. And again, this is starting with 25 students in the spring. It's a way to address some pipeline shortages that we're all facing, and especially critical in Spanish-speaking nurses within our healthcare delivery partner system.
Yeah, I think that this is a great program because as a Hispanic, serve university too, that help to integrate the language with the population that cannot speak English that well.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Yes.
Chairman Manson, I would have a question for Dr. Dake.
Go ahead, Regent, right now.
So it breaks my heart, and I've been talking to a lot of potential medical students that are going elsewhere because they think the pathway to get into medical school would be easier in some of these other states that maybe have a number of colleges, universities, or programs. So we have 240 or whatever the number is between Tucson and Phoenix. What are the plans? And you have 10,000 or I don't know, 14,000 applicants for so few slots. And so what's it going to take, say, to double the medical students in Arizona, and how are we going to develop a better pathway for Arizona students to get to medical school and perhaps, because I think it's very challenging for many of them.
That's a great question, Dr. Renaud, Ms. Regent Medenauer.
Well, I could be a doctor also.
Let me just first provide a fact that the College of Medicine Tucson class just admitted is 85% Arizonans. So we're highly focused on that. You're right about the numbers, 240 students per year with yields of 1.3 and 1.8%, depending on the campus. It's not much easier at any other state, but you're right. We have a number of physician shortages that we need to address. We're working on that. One of the ways we're trying to get to there is through this dual medical degree program that I outlined. Medical education is incredibly expensive. It's averaging now about $300,000 per student graduate from the time they enter to the time they exit. That's front end loaded to the first 2 years of the basic science years, that first 18 months or 2 years. The clinical rotation years are less costly. So there's a lot. So this program that we're doing with the University of Western Australia, there are 2 other such programs in the world, Duke, University of Singapore, and Ochsner Clinic in New Orleans, and the University of Queensland in Brisbane. This program will start with 75 students. They'll be all Americans. The costly part of training will be in Perth at Western Australia, which is one of the top 2 universities in Australia. They'll then come here, and we're banking on that they're going to stick here in Arizona once they've come here, had their clinical rotations, and that we can then train them and stay within the state. We obviously will be looking for students from Arizona, high school students, to occupy those positions. But going forward, we agree that we would like to increase class size. That is the goal. Right now, we don't have a financial way to do that. So we're trying to be creative about how we can get more doctors trained and staying in Arizona. About 85, well, of this 85% of students who are Arizonans who go into our medical schools, the total graduating class, about 60% stay in for postgraduate training in residencies and specialty training in Arizona. Those are just the facts. We'd obviously need to improve on that. And I think some of these creative educational programs are very attractive to students to draw them here. But in terms of sheer raw absolute numbers, you're right. We need to increase those class sizes, but it is very expensive. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Dake. The progress is really terrific under your leadership and the leadership of President Robbins. I'm especially pleased to see the progress on research that you showed us. I have a couple of questions about research related to that. How are things going, and what are your plans on collaboration between health sciences and some of the other programs on campus? Engineering, biochemistry, genetics, that's one question. A second one, with the $11 million in research expenditures at the medical school in Phoenix, what are your plans for really expanding on that with other collaborations, including those that may occur with the sciences programs at Arizona State University?
Very good question. Let me start with Tucson first, and then we'll go to Phoenix. In Tucson, we already have, I think, very strong interlinking with the main campus, but let's focus on some of the newer aspects. Going forward, and Dr. Cantwell is aware of this, one of the programs we'll be putting forward for next year's new initiatives is cancer engineering. So a combined program between the School of Engineering and the health sciences for cancer engineering. That can be very powerful, and we can talk maybe offline about why that is. But also especially in terms of bioinformatics and computing. Biostatistics, bioinformatics, we're resetting that whole program with the health sciences, and we'll interleave with the programs across main campus, and will be located in that Grand Challenges building that Dr. Cantwell described to you. That's very important for us. So we're very sensitive and aware of that, because I mean, together stronger, that my job is to be inspired, but also to make sure that we don't silo, that we're really outreaching
That's
across.
perfect. I had assumed there were some things underway that we weren't aware of. So I appreciate your letting us know.
Now, in terms of Phoenix, the last new economy initiative I shared with you, we need your help. That's a very, very big lift, that CAMI program. We put it in Phoenix for a reason. This is going to be, without a doubt, the absolute beacon for Phoenix, at least our role in Phoenix, in terms of leading edge research. It's going to touch a lot of areas, and it's, I think, going to allow for tremendous collaboration, associates, affiliates with TGen, with Arizona State, with Mayo, with NAU, with everyone in the health sciences. And that's what we want. The other area in Phoenix that I think shows good collaboration between the U of A and ASU is obviously the Institute for Future Health, which I described, and I think you're well aware of, which wasn't really in gear and getting full traction during COVID, but right now, we're really moving forward with that, and a lot of good opportunities and a lot of corporate contacts I think will bear fruit in the very near future.
Perfect. Thanks.
We have time for one more question if anybody has. If not, Regents.
I'll just make a comment. I was in a meeting where they were talking about supply chain problems, and the folks down in Nogales were talking about how that community is 95% vaccinated. And what pops up? The great appreciation for the University of Arizona standing on the border at the port of entry, vaccinating truck drivers headed north. And that's something, even though I've been closely involved with all of this, I didn't know. And I think it points to, we do so much good in all three universities, and yet we have not really broken the code on how to get that across up to everybody in the state that we're trying to engage with, from the legislature, the governor. I know there's a lot more going on than we know of, but it is an opportunity, I think, for us to tell that story. That's a remarkable thing that we did as an institution. Nobody told you to do it. You did it on your own. And that's to your great credit and the credit of the leadership at U of A. So thank you.
Well, I thank you very much for your appreciation, but it's really misdirected. It really goes to Cecilia Rosales from the Center College of Public Health, who's actually based in Phoenix, and she found these opportunities, and we just supported her. But awesome. We had events in Maricopa, out at Moraga Farm, 700 vaccinated farm workers out in farm. We've had events in Aguila and Maricopa, out by past Wickenburg, way out there. We're all over the state with these mobile units vaccinating farm workers.
Great story.
Great. Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. President Robinson.
May I have the last word?
Yes.
So thank you for giving this opportunity. I know we went a little over, but I think once we saw a little over each time, we kind of filled the void, as we knew we would. But I just appreciate the Regents and all the support we've gotten from you, the governor, the state legislature. This idea of One Health is something that we didn't even get to touch on. If you like what you saw today, come back next time. We're going to have more. We'll have the Student Success District open. We didn't even, Dr. Cantwell, there was a lot left on the cutting room floor, and she didn't get to talk about quantum networking and Dr. Sekat Gua and the $50 million award he has. I saw Vice President for the Arts, Andy Schull. I think he stepped out, and Dean of Fine Arts. We've got an entire part of the third pillar of the strategic plan around a big arts advancement. I wish we could have taken you all to to Hamilton last night in Centennial Hall. It was fantastic. We need a new redo of Centennial Hall, and it's part of Andy's grand vision for a new art museum. So we'll update you next time on that. And I think I saw Gail Bird here, and without her, first of all, we would not have gotten through our Higher Learning Commission reaccreditation. So we're all incredibly grateful for Gail's leadership on that. But this Commons building and the redo of old chemistry in these collaborative classrooms is really Gail's vision, and we're happy that we're able to get that done. So again, thank you all for being at the University of Arizona and all the support you've given us.
Thank you. And we're very excited to be here. The next item on the agenda, and that is quite an act to follow, is the Student Regents Report. So Regent Dave and Regent Kinder, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Manson. Today, we are going to be discussing two things. First is an update on the Basic Needs Working Group. And then second is some brief updates around some of the work we're doing with FAFSA. And so to jump right into the Basic Needs Working Group report, the report was published and it's live on the Arizona Board of Regents website under the Reports tab now. So before we hop into that and discuss some of the key findings there, I just want to take a moment to thank not only the Regents, but also university presidents, administrators, ABOR staff, especially Mark Danke, and then faculty and students as well for your commitment to this work as well as your collaboration. And we're really excited to present that here today.
Awesome, thank you. So just to start off, Regent Dave and I are incredibly grateful for this opportunity to share some of the issues that students are facing across the state and to propose solutions that we can offer and advocate on their behalf and improve the lives of these students. So just to start off, we want to give just some basic definitions of what we're dealing with food and housing insecurity. So first, food insecurity is the limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe food, or the ability to acquire such food in a socially acceptable manner. And then next is housing insecurity, which includes a broad set of challenges, such as the inability to pay rent or utilities, or the need to move frequently. So these are the two issues that we are mainly addressing with the Basic Needs Task Force.
So the question here becomes, well, first, why are these relevant? Why is this important? So, and according to a study done by the Journal of College Student Retention, food and housing insecurity have significant implications on academic success. Students who are reported to be food insecure or housing insecure, or both, have reported very high levels of stress, which of course detract from their ability to succeed in their schoolwork and manage their academic and personal lives. These students face difficult choices about how to spend their limited amount of funds, including trade-offs on whether to spend their money on educational expenses or food and housing. And so by encouraging improvement in food and housing insecurity, the universities can encourage continued enrollment, retention, and attainment. And so there's some data that goes along with this. Of students who report housing insecure, 42.9% of these students are at risk of not attending class, whereas of students that report not housing insecure, 3.3% are at risk. With food insecurity and students that report food insecure, again, 44% are at risk of not attending class, versus in the group of students that report not food insecure, only 3% are at risk. And the same trends apply for students at risk of withdrawal from classes as well as refraining from registration. So I'll turn it over to Regent Kanier to discuss some of the key findings from the report.
Thank you. So just specifically breaking down between the three universities and seeing how these issues really affect students in these three individual institutions. It was found that at ASU, 26% of students dealt with food insecurity. At NAU, it was 47%. And at the University of Arizona, it was 35%. So for these numbers, it was students who indicated they did not have enough money to buy food. They ate less than they felt they should, or cut the size of their meals because they didn't feel that there was enough money. And when they asked if they ever went without eating for an entire day because they lacked the money for food, a significant percentage said yes. And then following up with housing insecurity, for ASU, 14% of students reported housing insecurity. For NAU, 19%. And for the University of Arizona, it was 8%. following with the original definition that we gave at the beginning.
And so just to, again, kind of highlight the importance or the impact of both this work as well as these numbers. Why is this important? These numbers suggest that there is significant opportunity for us to improve at all three universities in food and housing insecurity, and that efforts in this, in improving these numbers, both in food and housing insecurity, will have significant return on enrollment, retention, and attainment. And so with that, we as a working group created a couple of recommendations that were then approved by the board as far as how we can continue to keep this a priority and continue to advance these initiatives forward. And so the recommendations are as follows. One is to develop and provide continued support to a basic needs committee on each university campus. And as a part of that, to develop a communications plan and portal dedicated to demonstrating and detailing initiatives taken by the universities. These initiatives and activities should also be linked through azregents.edu and can be updated regularly. And then finally, each university is to present an annual report to the board regarding efforts and activities to assess and alleviate student food and housing needs. And Regent Canyor and I look forward to working with each individual university to advance all of these recommendations forward. And so that concludes the Basic Needs Working Group report. Again, it's available on the Arizona Board of Regents website under the reports tab. So in case you're interested in learning more about some of the work there and some of the data there, that's where it's located. Finally, with FAFSA completion, this remains a significant priority for us. To kind of reiterate some of what Director Arnold said earlier, we are, as a state, in the bottom five of states in the United States in FAFSA completion at 44%. Compare that to, for example, Tennessee at 75%. There's, again, a significant opportunity to improve here. And what makes this even more relevant is that the legislature, recently passed a bill that gives the Arizona Board of Regents priority to be the initial and the primary administrator on FAFSA in Arizona. And so with that, we're looking at four relevant buckets. One is looking at targeted marketing, trying to get information about FAFSA into the hands of the students that would benefit from it most. Additionally, creating incentive systems around the state that actually incentivize counselors, teachers, et cetera, to help their students complete FAFSA. And then finally, to centralize resources around FAFSA as far as how students can use certain resources to make completing FAFSA easier and to remove those barriers of entry. And so we're actively developing partnerships, and this will be something that continues to be a priority for us moving forward. And so I'm really looking forward to presenting in our board meetings next year some of the work that we are able to complete. And so with that, head of schedule, I will just say thank you again to the Regents, university presidents, and everyone for your time today.
Thank you very much. The final item on the agenda today is the report from the Arizona Faculty's Council and Professor Ellis.
Thank you. My name is Kate Ellis. I'm the president of the Faculty Senate at Northern Arizona University and this year's Arizona Faculty's Council chair. The Arizona Faculty's Council has met twice to discuss the board's agenda and other issues of interest to faculty at all three universities, and this report is the outcome of our discussion. The AFC thanks the board for reinstating the Faculty Regents Breakfast around issues of mutual interest. These opportunities have resulted in thoughtful discussion and meaningful collaboration that ultimately benefits our students and the health of our institutions. The opportunity to once again engage with all of you is an indication for the faculty across the state that we are moving forward through the pandemic. We would also like to thank you for your approval today to increase the percentage of multi-year contracts each university can award. This will help us to recruit and retain highly qualified faculty who are committed to each university. We do, however, recognize the state is continuing to face significant challenges in the education of its citizenry, which have only been amplified by the pandemic. Post-secondary attainment report provides a stark reminder that education from pre-K through to graduate school is facing a future in which the aspirations to move everyone in the state forward into the new economies of the 21st century are in peril. We believe Arizona educators at every level can provide the support students need to master the most basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and advanced aspects of higher reasoning, creative thinking, invention, and innovation. But we need the legislature to invest in public education and to work with the State Board of Education and the Board of Regents to develop intentional intervention strategies that invest in compelling transition and intervention programs. The pandemic has only increased the attainment gaps, which were already in place. We have heard for several years that higher education is facing significant drop-off in enrollment in 2024 by 2025. This year, enrollment at all three universities was strong, but their future remains in question, and 2025 still looms in our future. The board will surely work to address the attainment report's findings and move all young people across the state, regardless of zip code, toward academic opportunities. The faculties of ASU, U of A, and NAU, armed with profound passion and expertise, are willing partners in student success and persistence. Please count on us for help on developing strategies to confront these challenges in K through 16 education in Arizona. Arizona students are deeply engaged in their civic duties and have recently reminded faculty of their desire to participate in our democracy. The AFC would like to engage the student regents in discussions about ways to help guarantee all Arizona University students the opportunity to exercise the right to vote. We know faculty at all three universities have taken steps through the planning of their course schedules to support student voting. Now we hope to examine these practices at each university together with the student regents so we can share best practices and provide unfettered access to voting. Finally, we recognize and applaud the ongoing efforts and very noteworthy successes at all three universities in support of climate initiatives, such as the construction of LEED certified buildings and the pursuit of carbon neutrality on our campuses. Our collective future is of significant concern to our students, and we urge continued university-wide transitions towards clean energy, sustainably minded policies and habits, environmental justice, and collaborative work with our cities and communities. We again propose collaborating with the student regents to discover and develop approaches for sustainability, adaptability, and economic success. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ellis. That is the end of our agenda for the day. I have a few announcements before we recess. For those attending the event tonight, it is in the South Ballroom. The reception starts at 5:30 and dinner is at 6. Cart service will be available following the event back to the Marriott Hotel. The faculty breakfast is scheduled for 7:45 tomorrow morning in the Sabino room. Cart service will also be available from the hotel, and I know that we are all looking forward to going back to doing that again. After the faculty breakfast, the board is scheduled to reconvene in executive session at 9 a.m. in the Santa Rita room for President Crow's and President Robbins' reviews of assignments. So that is the end of our board meeting. We are now in recess. We'll see you in the morning.